All right, so in accordance with the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and that this meeting of the Lunenburg Park Commission is being conducted remotely. Accordingly, for those that participate via video, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which can be found posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, can be accessed through the town manager's webpage and allows for public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. And as always, this meeting will feature public comment. And I will add in there that the town offices are now only open by appointment. There is no walk-in hours at this point. Quick roll call vote of who we have here. Susanna Jewell.
Here.
Chris Sullivan.
Here.
Anna Lockwood.
Here.
Dave Passios is in another meeting. He should jump over shortly. Rec Director Kayla Wright. And then we have DPW Director Rob Oliva. And myself. So first of all, I want to say a great welcome to Rob Oliva, joining us for the first time tonight. He took over as our DPW director back in November. So he is here. So let's get this ball quickly rolling. We have, as always, anybody that's new, I think Jared Bowser might also be on. If anybody has anything to add, they're welcome to unmute themselves and participate in the discussion or raise their hands. We try to make sure that everybody's voices are heard around this table. So we have no minutes because they're not completed at this time. So we're just going to jump to agenda 3. And does Rob or Kayla have any updates that you want us to know about?
All right, Kayla.
So I'm still working on winter programs. Went back to the drawing board a little bit because when we just went back with the guidelines, a lot of the vendors that I'm working with are pulling back on in-person programs. So we're restructuring them. However, the survey that I sent out to everybody that's in our system, they pretty much said that they want in-person programs. So I'm trying to work with the vendors to see what we can offer safely in person. And then with the ice skating rink, I am still working on that. I did send an email over to see if fire could possibly flood it for us once it was up, just because the water at Marshall is turned off. So the only way that we'd be able to have one is if the fire department could flood it for us. And as long as we all still agree that that's a good idea with COVID numbers as they are. I think from my standpoint, it would be like any park or playground. I mean, our parks are open, the playground's open with the COVID signs at the fence. I think something would have to be similar there, but that can be discussed if you guys would like. And that's pretty much all I have for tonight.
So is there a rink already? Do we own one? Do we have one on order?
So I have one temporarily held for us.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to place the order until I knew if we could have water in it so that people could actually skate, because it would be essentially useless if we didn't. So once I hear back, they said, so the company that I'm working with, because one of the companies that I've worked with in the past was already sold out when they sold out like back in September. But this other company that I'm working with, I know a few towns that have their rink and they're pretty reliable. They come with a warranty. The liner comes with a warranty and everything. They have roughly a 2-week shipping time frame. They have all of the kits in stock and it can be customized to whatever size we need, but it's just a matter of making sure we can actually get water in it before I pull the trigger and order it.
Okay. Did Chief Sullivan get back to you on that?
I just sent him an email this afternoon.
Okay. All right. We could line up with buckets.
Yeah.
Good idea. Okay. Great. Thanks. Rob, do you have anything that you want to add?
The only thing I have right now is, and Karen, I think it came from our conversation. There's, I guess, like an underground bunker at Marshall Park. And I guess the kids have moved what has been covering at least one of the entrances. I think there might actually be two that have been bothered. So we were just trying to come up with a way to maybe make a little bit more permanent blockage to the access. So I think we have some old concrete slabs at the DPW garage that we may do a little grading to make them fit neatly over the entrance and stack a couple so they can't be moved, just to keep any access into there. Apparently that's a very interesting bunker. We kind of looked it up online and there's some history to it. So I thought that was kind of neat. And I guess one of the firefighters has been down there before, and he offered to go back down again before we close it back up to take a look around, make sure we're not, closing anything in that we shouldn't be. So, so that's in the near future. Hopefully after the storm goes by.
If he does that, Rob, can you send him down with a camera?
Yeah, I can ask him, get some video with his phone. I'd like to see what's down there.
Yeah, I'm not brave enough to go down there, so I would like to as well.
I'd go down. I think I'm too big for the opening, so.
Yeah.
But that's all I have going on currently.
Awesome. Just one mention, just because you're here right now. I don't know if you're staying for the whole meeting. A couple of months ago, we had an email come through. It was a complaint about a sign over at Fitzgerald Field on Reservoir Road. I don't know if you could send somebody down. I think it needs to at least be removed for the winter to see if it can be salvaged. Every time I drive by, it looks worse and worse. It's separating into.
This is the main sign?
This is the main sign at Fitzgerald. It looks like it's hanging off of two just sections of chain.
Okay. If you would, Karen, I don't have a notepad in front of me. Would you shoot me an email on that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will. Okay. Hi, Dave.
Hi there. If I may, just very quickly about that underground bunker. It has been at least 5 decades since I've been in there. I was one of the kids 5 decades ago that dug the access tunnel open after it being closed for probably 8 or 10 years. And I've mentioned this before, it's been reopened approximately every 8 to 10 years when the new generation has found out about it. I ask that you be careful not to damage anything that's there at this point. Where the main opening is right now is where the what I'll just call as an access tunnel used to be. The last time they closed that up, they collapsed the entire tunnel up to the edge of the concrete slab, which is the ceiling of that room. So when you go over there, you'll see that the concrete slab is actually exposed a little bit at both of those spots where the kids attempted access and actually gained it where the original tunnel used to be. I would personally like to see us do something as part of the renovation of Marshall Park to actually make that historically accessible somehow if we can. And that's a discussion for another day, but I ask that we don't destroy any more than already has been, because that does have huge historical significance as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be very careful.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. So the next topic on our agenda is a discussion around the parks revolving account. So Parks has a couple of different ways that money's coming in. We have money that goes into a line item under the DPW. That's for parks. That's managed completely by the DPW. And then we have the money that comes in through fees. And that's what this revolving account is all about. Dave did some research, and then I went and completed that research last week and actually pulled up a 1984 warrant article that is what authorized this revolving account. And we just wanted to have a discussion tonight to see if that was the best type of revolving account that we should have, if there's something that needs to be changed on it, and just sort of get some more idea of what this revolving account is all about. So I don't know if any, it's a 50, Kayla, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 53D. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay. So this 53D, currently the way it's working is that funds from field usage, any recreational programming, and swim lessons are what's supposed to be going into that account. Can you tell us what a 53D is and how that sort of works?
So basically also beach fees in general, like the beach admission fees are going in there. So basically with the 53D, all the monies that Karen explained are going in there, and the fees that are associated with it. So the vendors that I'm working with for the programs, I'm just going to pull one of them, for example. So Viking Sports, you know, they ran flag football for us. So all of the fees that were paid from participants went into the revolving, and then their invoice was paid out of the revolving. So basically the money going in is the same money coming out, and then the excess that's left over is still in there. However, with the 53D, and the way that this one was set up, it cannot exceed $10,000 come the end of the fiscal year. So any money that was brought in that wasn't expended, so basically, let me backtrack a minute. So for all the vendor programs, whatever the vendor fee is, I add on anywhere from 15 to 20%. And that's basically the recreation fee that we're keeping to, you know, whether it's purchase supplies, long-term, whether it's for if they're using outside, like Marshall or Fitzgerald or anything, that 20% will help pay for improvements if there's any improvements that need to be done down the line. And they're also basically covering any type of cost that we're incurring. So basically if the fee, I mean, the program in general, it's $150, let's just say, that's what they're seeing, that's the only fee they're paying. And then behind the scenes is me splitting it between the vendor and myself accordingly. So basically any of the money that is not expended has to go back into the general fund. That's over $10,000. So it has to be spent down to 10,000, or anything that's in excess of 10,000 come the end of the fiscal year gets sent back to the general fund for the town. So we don't see that money anymore.
Okay. What's the best kind of revolving account to have for a program like ours, in your opinion?
So I would have to look at it a little bit more because I'm not sure that 53D can make the amendments, can make the changes that I think should happen. But with 53E.5, basically it does not have to be spent down at the end of the fiscal year. And you're basically have to go every year, you have to go in front of the selectmen or whoever decides what, you know, finances and things like that, and say, okay, you know, we think that the expenditures for the account will be 100,000 and you can't spend over that. So you can bring in more than that, but you can't expend more than that. So you're not giving any money back, but at the same time, you have a level that you can spend, if that makes sense. But you can also pay part-time salaries out of there.
If it's a 53E.5?
Yes, you can actually pay full-time salaries out of there as long as you charge the benefits with it. And the only reason I know that, other than researching, is in Sudbury, I had, in addition to a 53D, I had a 53E.5. And 2 of my full-time employees plus the 100 part-time employees were all paid out of the 53E.5. The full-time employees, their benefits came with it. That being said, we knew we had to make a certain amount a year with programming and fundraisers and everything else that we did. But with the 53.5, you don't have to spend it down. You just can't exceed the limit that you say. So for instance, in Sudbury, our limit was 435,000 that we couldn't exceed in expenditures. And each year you go for approval of that, and you can ask for an increase, or you can say that it'll stay the same.
Okay, and then what, how does in a 53D, how is the money expended?
The same way that, I mean, it's just expended through invoicing. So basically I submit invoices and it's paid out of that. At least that's how it should be done.
And I guess my question is, like, I know money's been expended from there prior to you coming on board. That I guess I don't know who the person that is that makes the decision on how that money gets expended. Is it us as a Parks Commission? Is it Rob as a DPW director? Is it you as the rec director?
So I can't answer for before I have been here, but in the past year, so basically it depends on how it was worded when it was set up also, because a 53 can allocate, can authorize a commission, it can authorize me, it can authorize Rob, it's basically however it was established. It would say, you know, and if you look it up on the state's website, on the Mass Legislator website, and I can send you guys the link, it says, you know, whoever the designees are. So if there wasn't anybody specified when it was established,
There wasn't.
Okay, so that's another issue. So basically, I don't know in that instance, but
Could I cut in for a second at this point? Because a little bit of information as from the research that I've done recently. And that is that, and Karen found this when she found the town meeting article, there was actually a revenue source that was excluded by town meeting. We don't need to get into that right at the moment because that's something that's going to have to be corrected one way or another. The other thing being that there was nothing else stated that I'm aware of in the article itself. It just referred to the Mass General Law. As you were just stating, there should have been, lack of a better way of saying it, a chain of command as to how the process of paying money out of that account should happen. There is specific verbiage in the Mass General Law when it relates to towns with a town manager. And I think under our circumstances, that process is probably what we want to work towards. But it does include some involvement with the commission, or at least you, Kayla, and the town manager with final word, I believe. But you know, we need to clarify that a little bit more. And it may be because of the way we've rolled these departments all under DPW. It may be more under Rob's control for the final approval of, say, a voucher. I think it's kind of intended to be set up as a voucher system, and then vouchers approved, and then invoices paid and approved by either Rob or town manager.
Okay, so this was just on there for discussion as we're sort of moving forward and looking at the things that I think need to start getting corrected. So I'd like to ask I'm opening it up to the floor. If anybody has any questions, I know that for some of you, this is probably the first time other than seeing it on the agenda, because I didn't really have anything to forward along because I don't know a lot about this. My thought was that we would put it out there to everybody if they wanted to take a meeting or so to sort of do some of their own research on it, talk to Kayla. We can ask if there's something that we want Kayla to come back with for the next meeting, we can do so. Because then we can, if we need to bring something to the town for town meeting through a warrant article, we have, I don't want to say tight timeframes, but once the timeframes start popping up, they seem to happen in a blink of an eye. They're like here and then they're gone. So we don't want to miss a deadline for something if we need to submit something to adjust any of this. I just want to make sure that the revolving fund that we have is operating the way it's supposed to be, bringing in the funds that it's supposed to be, and if it's not, let's get it fixed. This town meeting cycle. Susanna?
I just have a question. What would the point be in having the cap be $10,000? Why was that put in place?
It's a state law. That's put forward by the state.
Just to prevent one commission from bankrolling too many funds or something, or no?
I'm not sure. I have a little person opening the door. I'm
Roger
not
that.
sure. I am going to shut my
Okay.
camera off just because she's going to come in.
Okay.
But Kayla might be able to answer that.
So that, I don't know, but it does state it specifically and I can forward you, the general, both sections, the 53D and the 53E.5. I can forward the link to all you guys tonight, but it basically, it's not individually town designated like that. That's just if you ask for a revolving account as a 53D, that's how it's set up. You can't have over 10,000 come year end.
Okay. Well, just on this first discussion, it sounds to me like the 53.5 sounds like a much better deal for us. It just would involve us having to have our ducks in a row for what we present for our yearly budget, right? That would be the only sticking point.
Pretty much,
Right.
we would just have to
Yeah.
know like a rough estimate of how much we think that we would expend. And obviously we wouldn't want to expend more than we're bringing into that account.
Right.
So, I mean, the point of a revolving account I'm pretty sure it says it in the law, in the general laws too, is that it's, a self-sufficient fund. So basically what you're bringing in is also what you're putting out. But with a revolving account, it does allow for some excess.
Okay.
Anna, do you have any questions on that? Or Chris?
So in the 53D, we need to, if we're over the 10, we're supposed to spend that down before the end of the fiscal year, if I'm
Correct.
understanding it correctly. So
Correct.
do we need in the current situation that we're in, we should be looking at what the budget sits at now before we get to the end of the fiscal year and have a game plan of what we're doing with that money. And are there any stipulations of what we can do with that money if we're in excess of 10,000?
So money was carried forward from, and I just found this out today. Money was carried forward from this past fiscal year and not put back into the general fund because it's my understanding that finance wants to make sure that the way that the revolving account was set up is correct, and that they should be taking whatever's in excess of 10,000 and putting it into the general fund. Where it was carried over, I would have to talk to them to see if we kept it for this fiscal year or if they were still going to take it at some point, which would be a little bit hard to know because some money has come in for the new fiscal year. So that's kind of a I don't know question right now, just because I know money was carried over and it wasn't spent down to 10,000 because they wanted to make sure, because the revolving account was set up before Karen Brochu was finance. So she wants to make sure that it was set up how it was in fact set up. I'm not really sure. But that's basically what I got from her today.
Okay.
But we should potentially formulate a game plan on what we would do with any excess
Correct.
coming in.
The other argument is that there is money in that account that, as per the town meeting vote, should not be in that account. I don't know where it should be, but it should not be in that account as per the exact wording in the article at town meeting that was approved when it was created. So, there were a number of issues with this account as it exists today. And that's why we're pushing so hard to sort all this out and get it straightened out. Because potentially the money that shouldn't have gone in there could potentially be backed out. I don't know where it would go from there, but that could very easily pull it down below 10,000.
Great.
Kayla, sorry.
No, go ahead.
do you have an idea of which you think would be a better plan for us to go with? Stick with what we have or switch to the D&a-half?
I think personally for what we're doing, especially with something not only like the beach, but with programming, year-round programming, I think that it would make more sense to have an account like a 53E1/2,
Mhm.
just because we're trying to build up and establish, you know, a plan for improvements, whether it be field improvements, whether it be building improvements, whether it be, you know, if we want to make an improvement to the town beach and things like that, that the excess that's in the revolving can help with capital as long as it's going for the designated purpose. And having that 20% onto it, which the 20% is stated as administration, further improvements, purchase of equipment, things like that. It could be used for, you know, future improvements and things like that. So I personally think that working with a 53E1/2 is easier than a 53D, just because, and I had a 53D in another community, and it always felt like come year end, we never had a solid plan, and we were just making purchases to make purchases so that we didn't essentially lose that money. I mean, some of the purchases were things that we needed, and some of the purchases were things that, you know, we worked with other departments and it was like, okay, can we use this to help us with such and such project type of thing. So, and that can still very well be the case with the 53E1/2. You can use those funds for things like that. But I just think that that type of account is easier to work with and less of, I mean, you still have to know what's coming in and what's going out and have a plan for it. But you don't necessarily have to worry about when you get close to the end of the fiscal year, what you're going to do if you're over 10,000.
Karen, if I may, I also think a 53E1/2 would give a better perception to the organizations that are paying fees for use of fields and programming, in that they won't have in the back of their mind that if we don't handle it properly, their fees are going to end up back in the general fund rather than invested back into the properties that they're using. You know, that has come up as a definite issue in the last year. And I think it would go a long way to stemming that concern if we do get this straightened out and move it to a different type of account.
I agree. Does anybody else have anything on this before we move on?
I know David said that he didn't want to get into it, but what other revenue source has come into that account, and what's the value of the account?
Yep. So let me read the warrant article to you, and we've thrown it out there. We might as well throw in the whole thing out on the table. So in 1984, we're going way back. Dave and I had this discussion the other day about how old we both were. We voted to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53D, providing for a revolving fund for the park department user fee receipts, excluding those receipts from the operation of the town beach or act anything thereon. And that was voted and approved. So the beach pass fees, I believe that's the exclusion, is the beach pass fees for the use of the beach.
And has that been what we always done, is put so far in the past few years, added the beach fees to that account?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the value of the account right now?
Do you know what the total is, Kayla?
Let me pull up the email from Karen. Hold on one second.
On a side note, Kayla, do you have the access that you need to answer I was informed about the emails back and forth regards to my questions that went directly to the accounting department and were thrown back to you. Do you have the access you need to answer those questions?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
But I can tell you, so from Karen Brochu's email today, it looks like The balance brought forward from FY20 was $32,462.51.
My guess on that, Kayla, just as an FYI, yes, it was brought forward from the previous fiscal year, but I am, based on that balance, I think we have been pushing this balance forward for many fiscal years.
I also believe that based on what it was when I started a year ago.
Yep. So I do think that this is many years worth of pushing it from fiscal year to fiscal year. And
Yeah, I'm not sure it's necessarily been spent down every single year, but I think now because it's coming in question, it's being looked at.
which is fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine with it being looked at. I want it to be done properly. I just wish that it had been brought to the attention of the Parks Commission previously, because this is not the first time this is not, as this current commission, this is the first time we're really discussing it. But it is not the first time that I've had this, asked questions, had discussions about it, and nothing was ever said to me about, a balance forward of no more than 10,000. I mean, it just, this is all brand new to me too. So I really would like to get it fixed, for lack of better words, so that we're operating properly. And that we're not at risk of losing the funds that have come in. So, all right. So I think what we should do is, especially since we just threw it out there tonight, is I know Dave is still working on it. I still am trying to figure out all these, these 53Ds, these 53E and a halves, like these are all foreign to me. So I say, let's take a meeting or so. It'll be back on the agenda. At that point, we can really start solidifying what we need to ask of the town to correct, if we feel it needs to be corrected, anything, if terminology needs to be corrected, we can work with town council and we can get it moving forward so that we can maybe get something on the warrant for town meeting in May. And I know Dave will be right on top of the warrant closure and all that kind of stuff.
Pretty much we need to know what we're doing by the 1st of February to make sure that we get into the warrant without being pushed up against the wall.
Okay. We can certainly do that.
Hey, Kayla, you said you'd send some descriptions to us?
Yeah, I'm gonna send you the links to both of the 53D and the 53E and a half to you guys right now, actually, so I don't forget.
Okay.
And this is most likely new to most of us, if not all of us. We cannot, as a commission, discuss it via email or in person because of open meeting law. But if you have questions on what Kayla is sending to us, you can absolutely go back to Kayla and see if you can get those questions answered by Kayla. You just can't include the commission.
Can't copy everybody on the. Yeah.
Exactly. It can't be up, and it can't be up for discussion. So if you look into it and you decide that 75 3/4 is the better revolving fund to go with, don't throw it out there via email, because that becomes an issue. So just keep that in mind. You're absolutely welcome to go back to Kayla and she can answer your questions. You just can't bring a quorum of people into it.
Are there any other types of revolving accounts we should be looking at? Or are those the two that we really should?
Those are the two main ones. I would have to look further if there are other types, but those are the two main ones that I'm very familiar with, that I've worked with, and they're really the only two I've ever seen within recreation departments per se.
Okay, that's a good enough answer for me.
Karen, do you know if everybody is on the commission email? Like if I shoot it to the commission email, do you know if everybody is?
Yeah, so I believe we are all covered now.
Okay.
That Parks at Lunenburg Online should go to everybody.
Okay.
It should also go to you, correct?
It does, yeah. I just didn't know if Chris and Anna were added to it yet.
Yes, actually Chris was on it. Dave Passios wasn't on it.
Oh.
And Anna was just added to it. So when he sent me over the list and said, this is who I have, I'm like, why isn't Dave on there? So he was, so everybody should get it. So, all right, awesome. All right.
I think also so that we don't alienate our paid employees in town hall. I think it'd be appropriate for somebody on this commission or through Kayla to reach out to them and see if they have any suggestions as to what might work well within the mechanics of town finance, and at least consider whether or not that would work for us.
Yeah, we
I
can do
just throw it out there as one of those things that, there may be a couple of other suggestions that come forward that after we look at it, we might agree that that would work for both, from both directions.
One thing, adding on to what David's saying, and tying on to something we talked about it earlier, who designates who gets paid and approved. Maybe that's a plan that we can work with, the town manager on to how to best develop a plan for a new account, how all those things get sorted. So maybe the conversation with her is a bigger conversation, a very high level conversation to then work it towards the details. Because her ultimately, I think, would be the person responsible for managing the, any kind of revolving accounts and money. So maybe I think the conversation with the town manager should be more, how do you think this can work? Because I heard budget, and I know the budget is set up by town manager, but I think in terms of policy, the Parks Commission, I'm new at this, so I don't know if I'm saying what's right. I think that this commission can set policy for such as maintenance of the parks and schedule and so forth. So if we have a plan that we can work together, it'll probably be easier to get it approved in town meeting.
Correct. And you're right, we are the policy part. And I think some of it, and Kayla, you can correct me if I'm wrong, some of it's going to be governed by state law. So some of the, like the revolving count, like, your question on the $10,000 piece of it, that's state law. That's not, we couldn't make a policy to override that even if we wanted to. So some of it is just going to be a matter of pulling what, if we just, as we go further into it and look at all the details, looking to see what the 53.5 allows us to do versus a 53D, and then going back and like you and Dave said, sort of working with the town to see if they have any thoughts on it, and then going together with a cohesive plan to go in front of the town to get everything resolved that needs to be resolved.
So who would be the person who will, take the lead on talking with the town manager? Is that Kayla? Is that one of us?
Yeah, well,
It's a question for us as a commission. I don't know. I'm new.
no,
I'll use that. I'm new for a couple meetings. Okay.
Since my thought on it is, since it's something that the ball has sort of, it's being thrown in front of you guys tonight as for the whole commission, but it's something that Dave and I have we've talked about, we've sort of started to make some momentum. I think a combination of Kayla starting to sort out some of the stuff that she has to sort out with town accountant and getting access to some accounts, and her asking some questions, and then Dave and I, or if somebody else would rather do it, opening up the discussion further. If it goes to the, if it goes in front of the town meeting, it will come as it would be my hope that it would be allowed to go through as a Parks Commission warrant article and not have to go through as, something else. It would be good if it came from us, because we would be the ones, we're the ones bringing in the money. We're the ones trying to make sure that everything's working correctly. So unless somebody disagrees, Dave and I can just keep moving on it and open up that line of communication with the town, with Kayla's help. And then if we need to, we can ask somebody from the town to come to one of our meetings if we need a bigger presentation and get some more questions answered. Again, it's one of those things where the timelines always seem so tight, and even February 1st, yeah, it's 2 months from now, but it's really only a month and a half away. We're 6 weeks from February 1st.
And less than a handful of meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
maybe get Heather to come to the next meeting and have a few emails with her in between?
That's what I was thinking, like
Yeah.
just somebody just to, sort of start planting the seed and then as a group sort of propagate that and figure out which direction we want to go in as a group with Kayla's guidance.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, I think because of the structure that we're operating under right now, Rob's going to be a key piece of this whole discussion also. It's basically up to town manager, giving him the authority to operate these entities or these departments. So how that's going to wrap into control of the revolving account is also going to be vetted.
Yeah, agreed. So, all right, so that's the deal on that. So let's move on to the next item. If anybody thinks of anything between now and the end of this back on the revolving fund, we can bring it back at the end if we need to.
Just so that my takeaway from this is you, Karen, and Dave are working on coming up with a draft of how we are planning to structure everything and starting the communication with the town manager. And Kayla
Yes.
also. So those are the takeaways in terms of action items. That's all.
Yeah, not necessarily coming up with the final plan. I mean, it's not,
Right, a draft.
yeah, just something, if we look at the one that knows what she's doing out of this group, it's Kayla. And if she feels strongly in one way or another, to dive deeper into the 53.5, figure out if, even as a group, if we can dive into it individually, figure out if that seems to be what works. We'll approach the town, get the town's feedback on it, sort of have an idea of how this needs to work, what we need to have on a warrant article. And we'd have a discussion as a Parks Commission again to say, this is what we need to do to make this happen. That's sort of how I'm envisioning it. But if somebody else wants to be involved in it as well, I'm happy to step back and let you run with Dave. Dave has more knowledge.
No, I was not clear to me what like the takeaways. That's all.
Yeah, you can take me away.
Oh.
Okay then. All right. So the next thing I apologize for my really late email that I sent today. I did send out forwarded the field policy that we discussed at our last meeting. And in that policy, we had some changes that we had made as we were discussing it. I have, as promised, I will not read this field policy again verbatim. So I would like to just highlight the parts that we changed quickly and then ask if anybody thinks I missed something or if there's anything else before we move ahead and make a decision on this. So on the first page of it, it originally read that all applicants must be 18 years of age or older and must be present throughout the entire use of the rental period. We've added in there, all applicants and or designated representatives must be at least 18 years of older and must be present through the entire use of the rental period. That would allow for coaches if the folks that filled out the application weren't present. The next one was number 5 on the first page. It's been changed to read the initial rosters and a certificate of liability listing the town of Lunenburg as additionally insured are due at the time of request. Fees are due prior to the start of the season. If proper information is not received within the time period, your request will not be approved and you will not be granted use of the fields. And added to that is final rosters are due within 2 weeks of the season start date. That gives the leeway that I think we were looking for the youth sports organizations that have kids. Usually in that first 2-week period, we've got kids that come and go as maybe they've made a decision to play another sport or they've gotten injured. It would give some flexibility on those rosters. The next one was under user priority. We were wiping out the number 3, which was Lunenburg Youth Organizations, town-sponsored youth groups, because we don't have any town-sponsored programs. that I'm aware of. Unless somebody tells me differently, I don't think we have any. I think what we do have is like Lunenburg Youth Soccer, Lunenburg Little League, and those would fall under non-town sponsored programs. And the last one that we had was under field closure guidelines. All recreation fields in the town of Lunenburg are closed during the months of late November to the beginning of April for organized activity. Because if you remember, I'm the one that was like, oh, does that mean I can't bring my kids out onto the field in December? So that's just clarifying that it's for organized activities, such as we're not going to give permission for the Lunenburg Little League to suddenly develop a winter program because our fields would be closed from late November to the beginning of April.
Karen, did we think that through, that it definitely would not affect any of our intended programming going forward?
Kayla?
Yeah, because it wouldn't necessarily be organized on the fields. And if it was, it wouldn't be in the sense that fields would need to be cleared. And when I think of something like whether it's an organized snowshoeing program or something, it may be walking across them, but not physically playing on them like an organized sport would.
Okay. I think that there's some interpretation that could be had in that, but I don't think we need to change it at this point. We may need to revisit that down the road.
I don't mind changing something if you feel it needs to be changed. If anybody's disagreeing with any of these changes or thinks something else needs to be changed, just speak up. I'm happy, just recommend some wording. I just don't know what you want it to be.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to change the wording on that one right at the moment. I just think that we may find that contradicts something we may want to do, say 2 years down the road, but we could, revisit that issue then. I don't see it interfering with anything we have planned presently within the next year or two.
So,
Go ahead, Anna.
I want to kind of agree with what Dave said. I don't really know the reason for calling it to close the fields for organized activities during the winter. But, if 2 years from now, we decide to change to have an organized event there, or whatever falls under that classification, it's not likely that that we will remember to have to go back and change the policy in order to adapt that. And we might be then in violation of the policy. I would think that I would agree that maybe making a simpler or removing things that don't necessarily apply, which is what you're saying. It doesn't apply, so why do we need to even have the language for? It might be easier to manage than to 2 years from now have to remember that we have to go back to adjust the language.
So I can tell you, in my experience of years past, user groups have tried to get out there in March. Because we had no policy on when we were opening the fields, we would give them permission to go out in March, and then we'd play a game of, why are you on the fields? The fields are wet. Sometimes we get snow in March and they're thinking they can still use the fields, and they just completely tear them up. So I think this was a way to start sort of reining in some of that, to be able to say, no, we're not letting you out there until the beginning of April. It's not guaranteed that those fields are even going to be ready in the beginning of April, but 99% of the time they're not ready in the month of March to be going out there to play. So I think that was maybe Kayla can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been my experience. And I was the one who did all of the field approvals prior to Kayla coming on. And it was just a game of, these people are out there, and then how do they get in touch with somebody if the fields have to be closed, and who's making this decision? And again, it just came down to the majority of the time, the grass fields were just not ready by March. And by December, we're usually starting to get some sort of snow activity.
Yeah, and just coupling on what Karen said, that basically was the general consensus of something like that, because in every community I've been in, it seems like they want to stay on the fields as long as possible and then get out as early as possible. But then, you know, if they are out there in March and it's wet, then they're coming back to us saying, well, what are you going to do to fix the field? Because it was wet while we played on it. So now all the grass is chewed up and the infields need to be groomed more. So that was kind of the basis of that, to kind of establish, okay, like this is when we're closing the fields that we won't be issuing permits for. And I think it says in there weather permitting, because like Karen said, sometimes in April, they're still not even ready, depending on the type of winter we had. If we had a ton of snow, they're still going to be very wet.
We need to mention snow there. We don't say snow. We say frozen. We say wet. Do we need to say snow?
You guys tell me. I'm game for anything. No, is snow considered wet, right? I mean,
Open to interpretation.
yeah.
I think the other way to look at it is that, and you know, I do visual thinking better than I do head thinking. I've got it in front of me now. The fact that it says recreational fields and not parks properties are closed, I think leaves, probably for the time being, leaves enough leeway in there so that we won't have any conflicts for a very long time, I would guess. So I'm not so sure we can find any wording that's going to improve that paragraph.
Let me throw this out to you and tell me what you think of this. All recreational fields in the town of Lunenburg are closed during the months of late November to the beginning of April for non-town recreation programs. Because then it would leave it open to us, I suppose, if we, you know, if, I know you had mentioned something about what if we wanted to have a program, and is somebody going to come back and say, we're doing a snowshoeing program on the field that we said was supposed to be closed and that's organized? I overthink everything, so feel free to veto me.
Well, that would start to bring in what I had mentioned at the beginning, is that, you know, if we, and we're not going to bring programming onto those areas if it's going to damage them.
Correct.
You know, so if we leave it open to our programming, I don't see that as an issue. And you're correct. It covers us for those groups that say, you know, what are you doing? You can't let us, you're not allowing us
Right.
on those properties at this time of year. Why are you on there? That covers that very nicely.
Can't it just say something like at the discretion of the recreation director or something like that? Just
No, because
one
then it brings the organizations knocking at your door
more- Okay, oh yeah,
at a whim.
begging for favors or whatever,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
So I can add in, you know, it's closed from late November to the beginning of April for non-recreation department activities. Or for organized non-recreation department activities. So that it would still be open if Anna wants to go and throw around a softball in the middle of December because it's not organized. She can do that.
Can we put a date on the late November? I'm sorry, just to be exact.
Yeah, what do you want for a date?
We can say the 20th, we can say the 15th. Just
Carry the Saturday. Well, the date's going to move. Your weekend date's going to move. So like the Sunday after Thanksgiving or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what if we did?
This year, the Sunday after Thanksgiving was a beautiful day.
What?
yeah, and there is always some towns have football on, you know, people get together to play football after
Why don't we-
Thanksgiving.
What if we, Kayla, how would you feel about simplifying it even more? What if we said close from the 1st of December through April 1st, and then the weather policy really takes effect for April in the determination of whether or not the fields can be used?
Sure.
Does that sound all right with everybody if we actually
Sure.
put real dates in?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are making me work tonight.
Hey,
And
you're one of
obvious-
5 people here.
Yeah. And obviously if conditions, if we get snow and on the 10th of October and it stays on the ground for the winter, or we have a mud season that starts in October and leads into the winter, then we're going to close the fields anyway.
Right.
Right.
So this is what I've changed it to. All recreational fields in the town of Lunenburg are closed from December 1st to March 31st for organized non-recreation department activities. Ongoing opening and closing dates of the fields are subject to change based on weather and field status. I'm good with that if everybody else is good with that.
I'm good with that.
And then the only other changes I had was under general rules and regulations, under number 11, there's no subletting of any field or facility in the town of Lunenburg. Permit holder or their designee, I added, must be present on site during the field or facility usage. And then under number 15, I added in the Lunenburg Board of Health to the other lists of compliance with the State Department of Public Safety, state and local fire laws, the Lunenburg Board of Health in.
Here, Karen, could you, in that bullet, actually the copy I was able to print still has bullets. The other one came up as a blank document when I downloaded it. Now that may be my computer, so
That's probably me.
yeah, well, whatever. But I've got the previous document without the changes. And I was going to bring that up because this document doesn't have the local Board of Health. But I think on that same line, it should include state health department or whatever they're designated as. Because a lot of the regulations that are coming through the local Board of Health are actually state Board of Health regulations.
It will read Lunenburg Board of Health and State Department of Public Health.
Public Health. Yep, there
And
we
it's
go.
DPH, right? It's DPH, Department.
Pretty
of
sure
Public-
that's correct.
All right, does anybody else have anything that they want added or changed to this document before we move on to a motion on this policy? Does anybody want to?
Good.
Yep. Does anybody want to make a motion to accept this policy as written?
I'll make a motion to accept the policy as amended tonight.
Okay. Second, who wants to do that?
Second.
Second, Susanna. And I need to do a roll call vote on that. Susanna
Aye.
and Chris,
Yeah, aye.
Anna,
I
Dave,
Aye.
and an aye from myself. So that's passed. Kayla, do you think you can get this put up onto a website somewhere?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just send me it with those
Yep.
final corrections? Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep. Hold on, let me just save it so I have a new title on it. It's coming through. Kayla, I'll send it to you momentarily. I'm gonna leave the colors changes that I had done earlier just so you can see where they were, but
Okay.
I'm renaming it final.
Okay.
All right, so that's done there. Thanks, folks. Let's see. Now we are on to my rec. Kayla, do you want to handle that? Give us a brief, or do you want me to do it?
Why don't you start it off?
So my rec is a software platform that we use, the recreation department uses to, it basically hosts all of our programming. It has all of our information on it. And it acts as the gateway for people to sign up for programming. From there, it has a third party, I don't know if I want to call it third party, processor that processes credit card payments. And those payments eventually get put back into the revolving account. It's on our agenda this evening because one of our town employees, the treasurer, I think is her official title, is looking for access to this account. However, the way my rec is set up, and Kayla, please correct me if I've completely misunderstood all of this, is that there's no different levels of user access. So if we were to give somebody unrelated to the recreation department access to this account, they would have this same level of access that Kayla would, which means they'd have the ability to change everything that she has set up, whether done on purpose or by accident. They'd also have access to all of the information that the users have submitted, such as kids' names, birth dates, and all that kind of stuff. So we need to have a discussion as a Parks Commission tonight of who we would like to see with access to this account. Kayla, did I sort of hit that in a nutshell?
Yes, so there is different levels of access. However, the level of access to receive financial reports is essentially an all access. Like, you can't just give access for the financial reports. So if we were giving somebody access to receive the financial reports, they have access to the entire website. And that's also includes like if any of you have registered for programs or created an account, it asks for any allergies, any physical issues or anything like that. And if we start running summer camps, they'll be required to upload physical and immunization records. So anybody with the administrator access would also have access to all of those records.
Okay, and I guess that's what I meant, is that in order to have access to the financial report, there's not a different level of access to be able to get it.
Yep.
So these reports, however, can be obtained via email, correct? They can be automatically emailed from the MyRec people directly to our treasurer.
So it's from Authorize. So Authorize Net is the third party that Karen was talking about. So basically you pay online through MyRec, but it's actually, the payment screen of it is actually authorize.net. And authorize.net can send daily and monthly reports directly to the email. And then that basically gets matched up with the MyRec reports. The MyRec reports can easily be exported into Excel and emailed over. And it does have a level of personal information on it because it states who paid and how much they paid. And it doesn't give credit card information. It just says that they paid by credit card, because one thing with MyRec is we don't store any credit card information. So when you pay, each time you register for an activity, you have to enter your credit card information each time. We don't store it for security purposes. So the reports that would be printed from MyRec or exported into Excel and sent to somebody basically says the name, how they paid, if it was a Visa card or a MasterCard, and that's it. And you know how much they paid. It doesn't say credit card numbers or anything like that.
Susanna?
Yeah, so have you run into the same issue when you've used MyRec before, like in Sudbury, or was it not?
No, I've actually never run into this issue in the 3 departments that I've used MyRec with, because
why is it coming up then?
I'm not really sure, but I can. So let me backtrack a little bit. So in the past departments that I've been in, whether it's the finance director, the treasurer, or whoever it is that helps set up the account. So somebody within the finance team of the town has to help set up the account, and they have a form that they have to fill out because obviously I can't authorize financial things for the town. I can't, and I don't know the bank account that it's going into with the town. I know obviously the account numbers for my accounts, the recreation accounts, but I don't know the behind the scenes stuff. So somebody within finance has to help fill the paper. And on the form, there's an area for the authorizing party to put their email. And it basically states in all the paperwork that the authorizing person also receives the reports. So if you don't put your email, or you put your email and say that you're not the authorized person for reports, you don't get the reports. So it seems that that happened. So the person that should have been getting the reports wasn't getting them, and saw that money was coming in as early as May when we started using the system. Acknowledged that it was coming in, acknowledged that it was probably rec because they hadn't seen that type of account before, but only told me in mid-October that they weren't getting reports. So this all came about because then all of the reports from May had to be backtracked. So, and it took a little bit of time to backtrack all of the reports from May, since it included all of those daily beach passes, plus programs. So it took a little bit of time. And then Karen got involved because
I didn't get involved by choice, people. Let's just be clear. This was not by choice.
and instead of coming to me about the status of the reports, or basically it was left off that, okay, I can print you the reports, but can you tell me the information that you need? Because this is never, this is a situation I've ever been in before. If you tell me, you know, because the good thing about MyRec is I can manipulate the report to give me whatever information I need. That's just how the system was set up. So if I need the refunds, if I need the, you know, if I need it by park fees, by field fees, by beach fees, alphabetically, however I need it, I can manipulate it to give me that exact information. So, but it was never given to me how they needed the report. I asked. That was never given. So then they reached out to Karen and wanted to know why they can't just have access to the system to get all these reports. I met with them and asked, you know, I have no problem, but I'll show you how to get the reports, because like Karen and I explained, you have access to everything. And whether on purpose or not, if you do something within the system, it can skew the data, and then basically our data is not reliable. That wasn't a sufficient answer. So Karen got involved because they basically went to Karen wanting to know why they couldn't have access. They needed access, and basically I wasn't doing my job.
So, I mean, I think, I mean, that was a long story. It seems like this guy's been going through a lot.
Yeah.
But one thing I can tell you that I think it might solve this problem is that Authorize.net, they are a provider of merchant accounts.
Mhm.
And I bet you we can get I bet you, because I work, this is part of like things that I work, my current company works with Authorize.net. You can have a login to Authorize.net exclusively. And I know you can have it through the MyRack website, but you might be able to give them of the financial information they need directly through Authorize.net.
So it's my understanding that they have access to Authorize.net. But I'm trying to think the nicest way to put this. But for whatever reasons, they're not able to match up reports with Authorize.net and what the bank is telling them. Not really sure what reports they're getting from the bank, but they're not able to match it up. So I said I had no problem either printing the reports or exporting them into Excel and emailing them so that they can match the MyRec reports with Authorize. Because they've never used MyRec before, in a meeting, I offered to show them how to read the report. It's very self-explanatory, but I just wanted to make sure, you know, everybody was on the same page. It says right at the top of the report what type of report it is, if it's refund report, if it's credit card office, if it's credit card public, however it was done. But I wasn't given the chance to talk in the meeting, just really kind of cut off and told that I wasn't doing my job because they didn't have the reports and they couldn't match it and didn't know how to match it. So then I sent the reports from MyRec electronically. And then I logged into my side of Authorize because I have an Authorize access as well, the same Authorize access they have. And I spent a day taking the MyRec reports and the Authorize reports, and I'm able to match almost every single one of them. And the ones that I wasn't able to match, I easily called Authorize and said, hey, how come I see this in MyRec, but I don't see this in Authorize? Authorize was very easy, able to tell me how, why, and what the issue was, because I could tell them exactly what payment or what, you know, transaction number. But apparently it's still an issue, and they just want access to MyRec because I'm not giving them the right reports. Even though MyRec themselves have said that I'm giving the right reports. So that's kind of where it stands. It's a daily thing that takes up most of my day.
Wow.
I have a question, a little unrelated, but just when do we issue refunds? Someone
If the program is canceled, we do. So
If
like
the
if we
program's
didn't,
canceled.
if we didn't meet the minimum for the program to run and the vendor has to cancel it because they need a certain amount to run the program, that's when we issue refunds.
At that point, that money is already in one of the town accounts. Is that correct?
Yep, but then it's
Yeah.
refunded right back.
Right back.
Yep.
I mean, all I'm
And
saying is I can
authorized-
see,
Authorized would show that it came back out of the account.
right. All I'm saying is I can see why, the treasurer would want to have that really tight, because you can go through authorized.net and issue a refund maybe for someone who didn't pay in. So I can see, the person responsible for financial accuracy of the town's books would want to have everything really nice and tight. That's it.
I don't think Kayla or I would disagree with what you're saying at all. I guess for me, knowing that the information can be obtained without having to have that level of access to the website, to the MyRec website, is where
Well,
I'm.
Okay, what if someone pays by check? How do we process that?
If someone pays by check, it's not only put in the system, but it's put on a turnover sheet and handed in. And they process it, like the voucher is signed off on, and then they process the check also. But we don't have anybody paying, but everything is done online. The only people that pay by check are field users.
And that goes through the same process that any other department goes through for collecting of a check.
Yep.
So has their email's been plugged into the form retroactively now, and so they are getting the reports from MyRec, or they won't do it?
Not that they won't do it. It's now they've got to figure out, and they've.
It's not, yeah,
going
it's
back
not
to-
retroactive. So basically, when they noticed that the reports were coming in May, instead of kind of addressing it back then, it wasn't addressed to me till October. And so when they got access to authorize, and those reports that they should have been getting all along when they filled out the paperwork, but it's not retroactive. So basically, but they can go into authorize now because they have access. They can go into authorize and print the report. Like I can go into, for authorize, they basically have the same access I do. I can go into authorize right now and pull the report for May and match it up with the May report that I gave from MyRec. Same with June, July, August, September, October, November. I can go in and pull the report for the specific dates, basically the month, because it's done monthly, and match it up with the MyRec report that was given to them for the month.
Kayla, who else has access to MyRec as an admin, the same level as you?
Nobody has it as the same level as me. The beach staff had it on a registration level, so that when people came to the beach, because registration was required, when we took away the 24-hour notice and people could walk up and register right outside the gate, the beach had access to that to help people that may not have the technology at home. They walk up to the gate, the beach staff helps them. But that was merely registration access. So they didn't have access to the financials or the personal information.
Do we need someone as a backup to you, Kayla, to have access at the level that you're at, to assist in case there's an issue? Would be, I guess, one question. But then I'm hearing the other side. The information that's in there, and I've worked with databases pretty much my entire life, whether it was through fundraising and now, recruiting and so forth. I mean, it's the database is that coveted sort of deal, and it takes one little click the wrong way and things are lost. And
Yeah.
so that obviously needs to be protected. And it certainly sounds like we're gathering some information that should be minimally shared. So that would be my other concern. But if you're the only person that has access to it, is there someone else that should have access as a backup? And I don't know that it's just the person that's looking for reports. I mean, it seems like that's maybe not the right person.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And I've actually, this is other than when I initially started and we didn't use a registration software. And all my other departments, they haven't been a one-person department. So there always has been a backup person that had the same level of administrative access. But then, like you say, Chris, the more hands in the pot with a database, it just takes one. But I think it's a good thing for somebody else to have access on the same level, just in case there's an issue, just in case I'm out for whatever reason. But I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it's the person just looking for reports, because then their focus might not be on anything else other than just the reports. So I don't disagree, and you guys are more than welcome to designate somebody else to have that access, and I'm more than happy and willing to show them, and it's a very easy system to use, and I'm very happy to show somebody that, but I would agree, and I'd agree with the fact that I don't necessarily think it's this person just looking for reports when those reports can be given to them without the access.
So my suggestion would be figure out how to solve the information from, the lack of reconciliation from the previous months, and figure out a good system to help the town treasurer reconcile it going forward, and making sure, that they have some checks and balances on how things are being processed. So it's really just what reports going forward do they need from you in order to match with their information.
And
We just gotta
sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I'm actually meeting with the finance director this
Okay.
week to kind of go over that, because the meeting with the treasurer was less than productive, and it was more all about just getting the access versus actually listening to what I had to say and explain the reports and how she could get the reports without the access. So now I'm meeting with the finance director to make sure that the reports, if I'm able to match them up, why aren't they able to match them up, and where's kind of the disconnect, so that going forward, there's not these issues every single month.
Right. But I think there might be another level of checks and balance that they need in terms of accuracy. So for example, if we have a policy that says everybody needs to pay for this, what's preventing someone from just giving free registration to some people in town? So I think there is a level of hierarchy, and I'm not sure it's us, it could be the town manager, where they have to have access to that to make sure that we are, some of those policies aren't being enforced. And which it goes to a question that I was thinking when this discussion started, is when we launched My Rack and we set up a payment method and all this, did we create some overall plans on how all this information then would be stored and checked and so forth, or how was that planned?
When you say checked, I guess I'm.
Checks and balances of, because we are, for example, when we issue refund, we are issuing refund from a town account.
Correct, but we're also issuing a refund for a program that they registered for that we are not offering, so therefore.
Right, but it doesn't prevent from having someone, we're not doing, I'm saying from the town side, which is, something can, if we have someone rogue taking care of this, they could be issuing refunds to people that haven't purchased, because you can go and can a credit card.
But if I understand what Kayla's saying correctly, the MyRec account matches up with the iAuthorize account. Like you can see verbatim, if I'm understanding correctly, if John Smith paid for, whatever program through MyRec, and then they were charged through iAuthorize, and then they were issued both reports would then say that John Smith registered for this and paid $25, and it was via credit card and so forth. And then if that program was canceled and you issued a refund, both reports would indicate the refund was given to. So the only way that someone's going to either participate in a program for free or receive a refund is somewhere it's going to show up on the iAuthorize report would then show you gave a refund to somebody that never registered for the program through MyRec. So there would be that check and balance, I think, there.
Correct.
If both are set up to match up correctly, there shouldn't be further information that needs to be conveyed.
MyRec also doesn't let you issue a refund or account credit or anything like that without putting in a reason and without tying it to something. So I can't just go in and refund Karen Menard $50 when she didn't pay $50 for anything. And
But
I
you
can't,
might be able to do that directly through authorized on that.
But it's going to show between the two reports.
right, then the reports wouldn't match. The report from authorized wouldn't match the report from MyRec.
Okay.
And they're having they are having both reports each month.
So I
Sorry,
think,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is the agenda item to vote on whether this person is going to get full access?
So I think we now have sort of opened up a bigger can of worms. One of them, I think, because it's on the agenda, can be addressed tonight. And the other one, we either need to make the decision that it's a day-to-day operational thing. And then it would fall back onto Kayla and Rob to figure out how they want to handle it. Or if we think it's more of a policy thing, we can do it. So I'm looking at it in now two distinct categories. The access to MyRec and how we're going to reconcile the need from the treasurer's office to have the information that they need to basically reconcile their accounts. I do believe that all of that information, if Kayla can amend the original paperwork that went into MyRec or authorize, whoever got the original paperwork, so that the treasurer can receive the correct reports every month directly from them, coupled with what sounds like Kayla's would need to, Kayla, am I right in this? You'd have to forward some MyRec reports once a month?
And and I fill out a turnover sheet and turn in the reports. They ask for them instead of paper copies to be electronic, and I've done all that. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm super sensitive to having somebody that doesn't need to have access to personal information have access to it. I'm fine with eventually figuring out a backup for Kayla. I do think that needs to happen. And here's the example that I gave. I actually had a conversation with town manager about this earlier in the week. For years, the Parks Commission did not have direct access to the parks section of the website to make any adjustments. So for years, I had to send an email asking for something to be updated. Finally, that was changed. I don't know whether I squeaked the wheel loud enough or long enough or what happened. I was only given access to change the Parks Commission page. And that's all I needed was the access to change just that page. And that's what I got. Didn't have access to the whole town page. Where MyRec, the level that's needed to get access to these reports directly is the higher end access. I'm concerned about that. I don't personally think that they should have access to all of the kids' stuff with no Corey background, with no other safety check in place. It concerns me the more hands that are in the mix have access to these accounts. You guys all know me well enough to know what my family does on the side, which is foster care. You will never, ever know the last name of any child that comes into our care because you don't need to know it. That's where I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the privacy of the kids that come into my home that I register for program. If I'm concerned about them, I'm concerned about anybody else's kid that is registered, and that level of information is out there, from food allergies to eventually physical forms to their birthdays. That's just information to me I feel is personal and needs to be limited as to who has access to it. So if we can give the access to the reports that are needed, which I do believe we can outside of MyRec, that's where I think my comfort level would be, and would be looking to Kayla to say, hey, can you make sure that all these initial paperwork gets updated so from here on out, she can have the reports that she needs. And if she can't read them, then I think it's going to be them that needs to come back and sit down and basically be trained on how to read these reports. That's my thought. Feel free to jump in, share your thoughts.
I would agree with
I
you, Karen.
100% agree. Sorry, Chris.
Kayla, is it beneficial to you going in to meet with the finance director to have something from us that supports that, or is it better to do that after you meet with them? I guess that's my only other question.
I think at this point, kind of going into it would be beneficial to have something because they have been made aware that the access is kind of no longer in my hands. It's on the commission agenda and it falls in the commission at this point.
Okay, well, one final question, and just to clarify, the reports out of my rec that would be required to give the treasurer the information she's trying to access can be set up so that it's automatic. You don't have to remember to do it. Once you get it set up, my rec will automatically send them on a monthly basis. Is that correct?
So the authorized portion is the MyRec one, and it's not something that is time consuming. Once I know exactly what they need, it's a simple click of export to Excel, save it and send it. But the authorized ones are automatic, the MyRec ones are not.
Okay.
Because I go into the system and say, okay, this is the information I need on the report. You know, basically the credit card report, and this is the information that's on it.
Okay, so you have to customize a report every month. There's no way in my rec to set that up so that it does that automatically then?
No, and it's basically, and when I talked to my rec last week about that, it's basically a security feature on their end that it's not an automated report.
Right. Okay, thank you.
There's no discussion. I'd make a motion to, I guess I don't know the proper phrasing of the motion, to have Kayla produce a monthly report through MyRec and not grant access to somebody else to that database at this point.
I'd second that.
All right, let's do a quick roll call vote on that. Susanna?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. So Kayla, you have that to go back with. I would like to ask you to go back to Rob at some point and have a discussion over who we could, who you would recommend as backup access to this, whether it be Sam when she's eventually back from maternity leave, or just somebody so that we have access to that account if for some reason something happens and you're not able to get that information for them.
Yep.
So that would be awesome.
If I can throw in just for the second, I don't necessarily want to have that backup access to it because I don't know how to use the software or the website. But I would suggest Sam as that, Kayla.
Yep.
I think she's the best person.
Yep.
If you want to throw me on it, or if the commission would want to see me on it, just because she is going to be out on leave, I absolutely don't mind, and you could leave me on it for the long term as well. For instance, Karen, if you needed to get on once, come into my office and sit down with me. I have no problem with that.
That
That
works.
works.
Thank you. I feel like we're accomplishing some stuff. All right. Let's see if we can, I know Susanna needs to head out shortly. So the next thing on our agenda is the 2021 beach season, as well as policy for usage for non-rec department activities. So let's start with the 2021 beach season, and what do you got for us, Kayla?
So I asked for it to be on this agenda because this beach season is going to be a little bit different because I am having my third baby at the end of May. So
Congrats.
I won't be fully available for the summer. So that's why I am hoping to get an early start on this. That being said, I don't plan to be MIA. I just don't plan to be at the beach every day. I was at the beach pretty much every day this past summer. Just with COVID and making sure with the new policies and the new system and everything, that everything was checking out. But granted, I'll be having a baby at the end of May. I don't foresee myself being available 24/7 like I was this past summer. So I just want to make sure that we kind of get ahead of everything this year, assuming that we're going to go ahead with opening the beach again this season. You know, with posting the positions, my goal is to have the positions posted early January. And I already talked to Julie about this, and she's on board with getting the positions posted in early January. And then kind of over February vacation and over the college break, kind of interviewing and making final selections to present to you guys. And then kind of presenting to Julie so that they can be presented to the Board of Selectmen for approval, kind of all before the end of May. So that basically everything is set to go, you know, for the beach season, and it's nothing that will fall back on you guys or fall back on Sam or anything like that, to kind of make sure is all set to go. And, you know, I kind of had this discussion with Julie too. I don't plan to be MIA, and I did talk to Rob. I don't plan to be MIA, but I don't plan to be working the full 19 hours every single week. So with that being said, I just wanted to kind of check in and see if, you know, you guys had any changes you wanted to see for positions, for advertisements, things like that, and kind of let you know the timeline that I'm thinking, which is get the positions posted, you know, kind of right after the holidays, that beginning of January timeframe, and then kind of start the interviews over the February vacation and then that March vacation for the college students. I imagine I'll be doing the interviews the same format that I did last year, all via virtual, if things continue the way that they're going. And that worked out fine. Last year was either via Zoom or FaceTime or Google, whatever worked for them. That's basically how all the interviews were conducted. So that's basically the spiel on that part of it.
Well, I think your timing is impeccable. I say that, I say that for years, we have, one of the biggest complaints has been we deal with the beach too late in the year. And so thanks to your pregnancy, we can actually address it earlier, which I think is a good thing. My question to you is on advertising. In years past, we've had limited applications for the majority of our positions. Every couple of years, a handful of years, we get 1 or 2 new applicants for lifeguards. And I'm wondering if we just haven't been advertising in the right places, if there's someplace else we should be looking. And to piggyback that question off with, you know, would we be able to utilize, I don't know what's in, I'd have to go back to the job description, but would we be able to utilize whoever we bring into the town beach this year to sort of cover some of what you have done, when you're out, if there's a need, if any of those positions would be able to cover your, you know, what you would normally do. I don't know if that's worded right, but that's where I'm going.
To answer your question about advertising, I think one of the issues is the timing of the advertising. You know, like you said, it's always been advertised late in the season or things like that. And I think a majority of people have already secured a summer job, whether it be lifeguarding or something else. So in hoping that getting it out early, people know that it's, you know, if they're hired, it's a guaranteed job and they know earlier than their friends type of thing. But I think also advertising to some of the local areas. I have an established relationship with Orchard Hills now, just from when they were going to run lifeguard classes for us. And I did talk to them again about that possibility, but we just have to kind of see how everything with COVID is playing out as it gets a little bit closer to when we would kind of run one. But I think getting it posted early and getting it posted in places that younger people would look. I know from my experiences, posting it in a newspaper, things like that, don't necessarily get all the attraction that we want. It may get a parent that wants their child to have a job, but it may necessarily not, that child may not want that job. So I think the game plan as far as right now for posting, I plan to post, I know Julie posted on the town website and I believe one other area. But I will post it on our rec website. It'll go out to the rec database that's been established. It would be posted on the rec Facebook. It would be posted, I belong to Mass Parks and Rec. And I know a lot of recent grads and things like that are always checking that website. So it would be posted there. I believe the other site, Julie does post to Indeed, I believe, which is a hit or miss because sometimes it's just like a web and it just grabs anybody that says they want a job. And it's a lot of screening process. So, and then also reaching out to places like Orchard Hills and other local areas saying, okay, these are the jobs we have available because indoor facilities may not be running at a certain capacity, whereas we have a little more flexibility with an outdoor facility.
We could potentially share those over the various Lunenburg
Yep.
Facebook pages as well. There's
Yeah.
20 of those. So
There's 20 of them. I thought there
probably.
was-
But Karen, you brought up a good question, Karen, too. I think with if Kayla, if you were there every day last summer due to COVID, trying to sort things out, we don't quite know where we're at yet. So identifying someone that we can trust to maybe fill in those potential gaps. Depending on what articles you read, we're not out of this. We're not out of the woods yet for a while, even though there's a vaccine coming, and so it's something I think we should definitely be very mindful of. That we're going to want to identify that person that can be there to fill in those gaps.
And when I say I was there every day, I wasn't there all day, every day, but it was, checking in, making sure they were all set with the system that we were using and that they didn't need any additional supplies, if there were any issues with, the number of people that were there and things like that.
Yeah. It seems like those responsibilities might need to be added to the responsibilities of the beach director or whatever that.
Yeah, and it may require a change of job description. I mean, it's just something I was throwing out there. Maybe it's not. Maybe a lot of what Kayla had done beach-wise is stuff that is already covered in the beach coordinator description.
Right.
It's just something I was throwing out there. So Kayla, I don't know if you we can certainly make a motion to your timeline. I don't know if you necessarily need one. But so you're looking to start advertising just after with interviews between February and March. And then throwing out some job offers, to that round. Would we be able to, I'm looking to what we have done in the past in terms of offering a lifeguarding course at the beach. If that happens, would we be able to open it up to another round of hiring if we needed to? These kids take this course and then they're sort of left to their own devices because we don't typically offer it till really late in the season.
Yeah, so basically what Julie and I had done last year was we put something about like preference given to candidates that apply by a certain day, but that the posting will remain open type of thing for that purpose. And last year we had kind of established a class in February and then in March, but COVID happened and those classes couldn't happen with Orchard Hills because everything had gotten shut down. So I'm hoping to try and offer one. I know that one is run like right before the beach opens. And for that, we could, the position can remain open like it did last year. And if there's, new candidates within that lifeguard class, it can be offered to them. If there's a need for them type of thing. I just wouldn't want to necessarily hold out positions.
Oh, no.
But I'm hoping that Orchard Hills is going to run some formatted class. I know that there's other facilities that are running like a majority online and you just basically come in to do your skills type of thing, and they've modified how they're doing the skills and evaluation type of thing. So I'm hoping to be able to work with Orchard Hills and kind of offer one in February or March and hope to get applicants from that as well.
Okay. I think the timeline sounds good. I mean, I think we actually tried to do this last year where we were going to have try to get it off the ground earlier than later, and it just didn't happen because of COVID. So I am actually excited that this could be off the ground earlier than we've ever had it before, because I do think waiting to the last minute and then suddenly telling these people that they have a job opportunity, you know, if they don't want to wait around for us, they're going to go look somewhere else. So I like the idea of having it early. I don't know if anybody else has any feedback they want to give on that.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in a little bit on this and just so that we're all on the same page. I think if we're going to have a motion or some type of approval from the commission tonight to move forward with that time frame, which I have no problem with whatsoever, I think we should also state at this time, our intent is that we will operate the beach exactly the same as we did at the end of the season last year until such time as things change enough so that we can alter that. So that at least going forward for the time being, we're planning and staffing at a level to operate exactly the same way we did last year. Hopefully, as we move closer towards spring, we might see it loosen up enough to consider lessons. But if it doesn't, I don't want us planning that right now. That's my feeling.
I agree with that. Seems like it's
What's
tracking.
where we operated at the level we operated last summer, and I'm not sure, I don't entirely know the level that it was operated at. How does that compare to the level that falls under the guidelines that the state has us under right now, phase 3, step 2, I think, right?
Are we that far forward? I thought we were backwards already from that.
I think we're at phase step 3, phase 1. We went back to.
Right, and
But-
One from 2 to 1, right? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but that still allows us to, I'd have to double check, but I believe the beach was able to open, and Dave, you may be able to help me with this, was able to open in phase 2?
I believe so,
I
yeah.
think it was the very beginning of phase 2, step 1, I think it was. The beach was able to open, and basically we, operated on we had set a capacity, and we had kind of broken it into 2 time frames based on the recommendation, from the Board of Health and stuff. And we had a morning time slot and an afternoon time slot.
Right.
And registration was required. After we kind of got a hang of the 24-hour in advance registration, we did change it to you could walk up to the gate and register, and that worked out a lot better for people because if you decided, at 10 o'clock in the morning that you wanted to go to the beach that morning, you could easily just sign up and go. So I think that would be the best way to say that we were going to operate right now, like Dave was saying, how we started operating towards the end of the season. But we were allowed to operate in phase 2 of opening. So even if we reverted back another step to step 2, we, as of right now, we still would be able to operate the beach.
And I believe that I believe it even if we go back to step 2, I think it would be operated almost exact as what we close with. The only thing that might change would be the maximum capacity, but I will tell you that we never hit the maximum capacity that we allotted. The beaches, with Kayla on board, I think she is getting a better idea of the needs of the beach. And not that I'm not saying that it was run improperly to begin with, but she's able now because of the way we tracked things. And the plan was to track the attendance in a similar fashion all along. It's not like COVID happened and suddenly we were tracking this. We were planning on doing this anyway. COVID just gave us a little bit more of in-depth information because they had to register for a time slot and that sort of thing. I think she has a better idea now of what we get for turnout at the beach during a pandemic. And she can sort of formulate there what she thinks staffing is going to have to look like. But I don't think we would see a big change, even if we reverted back to step 2 in the way it was run, just because, again, we never hit capacity.
And I think, and that's kind of clarifies it, because I wasn't necessarily thinking about the way in which we ran it. I was thinking more the numbers.
Yeah.
So if we were to put out there and say it's going to be run the same way we ran it last summer, but we're allowed to have an increase in numbers right now, I would want to.
Remind me, I can, and the same for Anna, if somebody reminds me, I'm happy to shoot you over some of the reports that Kayla had put together for our summer updates with
Okay.
what we had for turn. So you can
Cool.
see what the numbers are that we're dealing with. You can also see what we brought in for revenue and what we expended in revenue, because we didn't come anywhere close, which sort of it further drives home the fact that it's been our swim lesson programs that have sort of helped carry the beach along for the vast number of years, because we've always required a beach pass to sign up for swim lessons, and that's where the bulk of our income comes from, is people getting beach passes because they want to take advantage of swim lessons. So does anybody think we need to motion on this in allowing her to open up in January, or are we just good with, I don't remember what we did last year, so does anybody remember?
I don't think we necessarily took a motion. I think it was just kind of something that was agreed upon at the meeting. I don't think there was a formal motion, though.
Okay, does anybody disagree with Kayla opening this up for advertisement and moving forward with interviews in February and March?
Oh,
Sounds
No.
good, Kayla.
Works good.
Yep, go ahead, Anna.
The agenda item was beach season and policy for usage for non-recreation department events, discussion and vote.
Yeah.
Did we cover that?
I'm jumping over to that second piece right now. So
Oh,
the-
okay.
Good
Because I
segue.
think that's the only part that had the vote.
Yeah, so the second piece of that is for the past, and please don't, I am not singling out anybody or anything. I think we're at the point where we need a policy. For the past few years, come the middle of the summer, in this case, it happened in the early fall, we get a request to use the beach for a baptism. And I'm sure we've had other requests over the years for other things. The request usually comes in to use the beach on a Sunday morning before the beach opens up, which is problematic in itself. And I think based on the fact that all of our other facilities, we have a usage fee if anybody wants to do an organized activity out there, that we actually require a timeline of when they want to use it, X number of weeks in advance. I look at the beach and say, well, why are we not doing the same thing at the beach? But I also look at it to know that that is a locked facility. And the past 2 years, and I don't mind doing it when I'm available, the last 2 years, I've been the one as a volunteer to go down and open the beach for use. But we have no lifeguards down there when they're using the beach. They're in the water. I think we need to create a policy. Now, I put discussion and vote on there. I want the discussion. I don't mind a vote either. I'm at the point though where I think when we're starting to talk about policy things, and as we're creating policy, I always think 2 readings or 2 meetings to think about it is beneficial. So we don't necessarily have to take a vote on anything tonight, nor do we all have to agree, nor do we have to have any input. If people think I'm crazy, that's fine too. I'm just looking at it to say, how do we create equality in the use of all of our facilities so that we're not granting permission to outside organizations to be using the beach free of charge when we charge for every other facility, where it's requiring time on behalf of another volunteer, or in some years it might be an employee, to go down and open the beach for groups of people. And we could get another request. We could get a birthday party. We could get a Girl Scout event. It's not exclusive to a baptism. It could be really anything that anybody wanted to have.
I'm shocked actually we don't have a fee for the beach use for a non-sanctioned parks event or public, for general public access for town residents. I mean, I think anything that's not related to open hours of the beach, I would think we would need to establish some sort of fee, and I would suspect that even liability and so forth, that we would have to have, a lifeguard present, and that would be a fee. That's an additional fee that would be covered by whoever, whatever group or individual or whatnot is using the, using the beach for a non-recreational activity.
That's
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. There should be a fee for the beach rental, and there should be a required lifeguard according to the what is the guideline for number of people per
Right. Yeah. More than one if there's
lifeguard?
whatever. Yeah. The appropriate
should
number of
have-
lifeguards. Yeah.
That's a huge liability, right? I mean,
let me tell you, it makes me nervous every
Yeah.
time I've opened it, because I open it and I cross my fingers and I come back an hour later and I hope I'm not rescuing people from the water. I hope I
Yeah.
don't fire department there. And it's not, I just think if we could have just something, and it wouldn't be exclusive to one group that would have to have it. It would be anybody and everybody that wanted to use it for a private rental would have the same rules to follow. So everybody would have to have a lifeguard. Everybody would have to register. And the other thing is that we require Little League to have a certificate of liability, soccer, anything else. We've never asked that of, and I'm not the one who orchestrates it. It always has gone through town manager for some reason. And then it sort of trickles its way back to us. So, in the grand scheme, I didn't approve, Kayla didn't approve the last couple of years. But they've never asked for, I don't believe, a certificate of liability either, saying that they have insurance covered. I mean, a certificate of insurance.
Here I did,
You did?
because it got passed on to me. Well,
Okay.
I should say one of them.
Did
Two
you-
other requests didn't end up happening, but the one that did end up happening somehow got passed to me after permission was given. But I did make them give a certificate of liability.
Good to know. Good to know. So just, I would like to see it continued into a second meeting before we make a final decision, I guess, just so we can ask Kayla in every free second that she has to create some wording on the policy of what it should look like for use of the beach for whatever event.
It would take us back to the prior meeting where we approved the field usage fee document to amend that to include the beach.
Yep.
As well. And are there places to go to look at what other towns might charge for beach usage? Because I wouldn't estimate that it's just the $50 one-time field usage fee that we have listed on that form. I would suspect maybe when it comes to beach usage, we're including a little bit more, maybe. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I can reach out to the surrounding towns, and I also have kind of a policy from years past for one of the beaches in one of the rec departments, but I can reach out to the surrounding towns that have a beach.
That sounds good to me. Does anybody have anything else on that or disagree that we should hold it for the next meeting?
No, it's definitely a good idea to carry it at least 2 meetings. We may get some feedback after somebody sees this video too, and then we're able to consider any additional feedback we get from the public also.
You say carry it 2 meetings or 3 meetings?
2 minimum.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. No.
All right, so that's good on that.
Okay.
Front.
Before we get off the beach, could I ask a favor of Rob and or Kayla? And I expressed this concern the other day. I drive by the beach building a minimum of twice a weekend. And I look at it the same way I look at it as a piece of property I have in northern New Hampshire, which is closed up for the winter. If I'm not able to go up there and check the building at least once a month during the winter while it's closed up, one of my neighbors goes in and checks the building. It concerns me that we leave that building closed up and unchecked, as far as I know, for the entire season until beach season comes around. And then lo and behold, I don't think it happened this year, but last year we found that the place was a mess. It was left that way and it sat that way all winter. I'm more concerned about if we were to develop damage to the roof and, you know, we have extensive water damage when we go and open it up in the spring. So I'm just asking that somebody check the building once or twice over the winter so we don't have a surprise in the spring.
Yeah, Dave. I mean, I've been in it only because I was getting a tour of the facilities. If Kayla's not able to do it, it may make sense. I can talk to Kit, our facilities superintendent, to have a periodic check on the building. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
I mean, there's a couple of things on that building that really need to be repaired to protect the envelope of that building that we didn't deal with last summer. We'll talk about that stuff moving forward. There's fascia that's blown off and things like that, that over time, the weather's gonna get into the inner structure of the building. Not that it's in very good shape as it is, but maybe we can slow its deterioration.
That would be nice. Would be nice. All right, excellent on that one. All right, Suzanne, are you stepping off?
Stepping off. Sorry, I gotta get
No, that's
sleep.
completely
All right.
understood. Thank you.
Hey.
All right, so
Hi,
the next,
Suzanne.
and we really only have a couple left, so we can hopefully get through it pretty quickly. Hunting on park property, a discussion and a vote. I don't know if anybody else has followed what's been going on in town. The Conservation Commission has taken up the topic of hunting on conservation properties again, which has trickled down to us. And some of our properties are either near or in some cases abut conservation land. And we don't have a strict policy, or we don't have any policy on hunting on parks property. It is my understanding, and Dave, please correct me if I'm wrong, that since we don't have a policy and if it's not posted, it does mean that if they want to hunt there, they can hunt there because we don't have that policy. Am I correct in that, Dave?
That's been my assumption and my concern. And there was one email that I received that I forwarded to Karen just before Conscom had their public hearing last week or the week before in regards to hunting, asking about the Sullivan property in particular. And that's really the only property I think we have control over right now that would fall under hunting regulations that would allow hunting on it. I guess there's two things to look at here. One is, how does the commission feel about hunting in general on parks properties? Two, do we want to, and we should, I believe, consider hunting with guns and discharging firearms on parks property versus bow hunting, etc. I think mixing a passive recreation and hunting on the properties that we presently have control over, in my eyes, is a no-brainer that it shouldn't be done, but I'm only one person. But I also want to, if we're going to set a policy, I want to be looking at the future and the possibility that we might have other properties as big as the Sullivan property that would need to come under that policy.
So for those that don't know, the Sullivan property is a recently acquired piece of land off of Northfield Road down by the golf course. There's two sections of that land. The north section is conservation land and the south section is Parks Commission land. So we can't make a decision for the Conservation Commission and they can't make one for us. That at this point, as Dave said, is the really only place to hunt. Every place, I mean, I suppose maybe a wooded area of Marshall Park, but I think that even that's too close. There's some pretty strict guidelines when it comes to gun hunting. You have to be 500 feet from the nearest house, but there's exceptions to that, which is if that homeowner gives you permission, then you can hunt within 500 feet. So when I look at the map of the south side of Sliba property, if the homeowners in the area didn't give permission, it leaves a very small piece of land available. But then I keep coming back to the homeowner giving permission. People walk this property. At some point, this piece of property will hopefully be developed into something, whether it be active or passive recreation. I feel like I'm sometimes part of the minority that knows when hunting seasons start and end and how many different hunting seasons we have. I don't think the average person in town who may want to go out for a walk to check out a piece of property or something to do with their kids is going to know that there's multiple hunting seasons, multiple ways of hunting. It would concern me to have a hunter out there on Parks property while we have passive recreation activities going on.
I'd be looking to set the tone, given the Sliva property is probably, like you said, the really the only spot that it could take place. But I'd believe personally in setting the tone now for that space of land, even before we hopefully develop it into, I don't know, fields or whatever it's going to become down the path. But I'd believe in setting the tone now so it's not an issue when and if we decide to do something different with the space.
And I think a plus to that also is that I've got to guess that that property has been hunted over the years up to now. So starting early with educating the hunting community as to whatever our final decision is about that property would give us a little bit of time to get that entrenched before we do formally set up some type of recreational activity on that property and have to deal with it head on at that point.
Do we know if there's any other communities in the area that allow hunting on Parks property? I didn't even know how to search it. I was just curious if
I don't know.
anybody had come across it. Rob, if this is something that the commission takes up in a vote tonight to not allow hunting, I believe it then needs to be posted. Is that something that you guys would be able to figure out and take care of?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, you have to post so at certain intervals along the perimeter of the property. If it's, I don't know the property. I don't know if it's well bounded with stone walls or any kind of property markers, or if you have some kind of survey in hand. If that's the case, I mean, if it is well marked, we may be able at some point be able to get a guy or two out there if the commission can provide the signage.
That's on you because we have no money.
Yeah.
We don't have a budget line item we could tell you to go buy it, I suppose, and tell you to get it out of the line item. So I guess that would be my next question is, I do believe that if this is the decision of the Parks Commission, or even if Conservation Commission decides that they're going to not allow it, I do believe we have a volunteer or two that would be willing to post the signs if we could get the signs to them. Not that I'm volunteering my husband, but I'm volunteering my husband. He's been mapping a lot of the some of the conservation areas, the walking trails. So I know that it's something that he'd be willing to take on. But I think it would, I don't think it's just, I do believe, Dave, you can correct me that I'm wrong, that it would have to be posted, correct? As no hunting, in order for it to be no hunting, because if it's not posted, I believe that a hunter can make the assumption that it is available to them.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. I believe that's state law.
Yeah.
The state,
I don't hunt.
I'm sorry, the state law is any public land is open for hunting?
Public and private, I believe. Even if you're a private property owner, if you have land that contains the area that makes it legal to hunt on, if you don't post it, it's assumed that you can hunt on it.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's weird that that's the way it's worded, but that is my, that was my understanding of it as well. And if you have a piece of private land, it needs to be posted if you don't want it hunted. It says, barring a town regulations in Massachusetts, you don't need permission to hunt on private land that is not posted against trespass. Recommended that you get permission from the landowner, get written permission, but it's not required. So based on that, you know, I think that, you know, we have to, so the town doesn't have, the Board of Selectmen is not the ones that are entertaining passing a policy on this. This is the Conservation Commission, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that their policies would only be jurisdictional to their properties.
Does anybody have any discussion that they want to throw in on either side of this? Either side of this. And then my next question would be, is this something that we, as I just said, I policy decision wise, I like to see it, I'd like to see it start being carried over to another meeting. Do we carry it over to another meeting so that we can get further input on it?
Karen?
Yeah.
Unrelated to this, I have to hop off. My husband just got called into work early and I have to put my little one to bed.
Yes,
So
no
I
problem.
have to hop off, but I will catch up with you for the rest of the agenda items.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Hey.
you.
And Rob, you can't go anywhere before the next agenda item, so you're not hopping off anywhere. You've got to
I'm in it for the long haul.
have anything on that, on hunting on park property.
Overall, I just don't think it matches what we've been trying to do with the parks property. I think there are other land that people can hunt. We have very limited, and the expectation that people usually have when they go to a park is not necessarily to be dealing with, you know, hunters. I think, you know, when I go to a town forest with my dogs, I'm not as aware of hunting season, but I know that it's allowed. But when I go to a park, you know, and like you said, maybe even somewhere on Marshall Park might be allowed, if the abutters would agree. I don't think it matches to what I would expect to experience in a park versus conservation land or state park.
Yep.
Agreed.
Should we, is it something that we want to make a decision on tonight, or should we go with what I've sort of said all along and try to wait for the next meeting to make a decision? I don't know. We're in the middle of hunting season right now. That's the only thing that would concern me about not making a decision tonight, is that I believe we have an active hunting season going on right now.
The only thing I'd say to that, I don't disagree going either way, whether we do it, you know, quickly or think it through a little bit more and do it at the next meeting. is that we do not have a formal recreational use going on at the Saliba property, with the exception of the fact that the public is aware that it is under Parks control, and I'm sure there are people walking that property just like they're walking the north side of conservation land. So I don't think there's a driving force that tells us we need to do it immediately.
I'm looking right now. I agree with you, Dave, and I'm looking at it. We today entered primitive firearms. And
Yeah, so black powder and stuff like that.
yeah, and I think has its own set of rules. So I don't think we're in a huge rush to make the decision. You know, so we've opened up the discussion.
Now the lettuce farm property will abut this, is that correct?
I think so. You know, Dave, I need to look at the map again, and I need to have, I'm visual. So when I see two different maps, I always think of it as two different properties. I need to see one map with everything on it. And when I was on the GIS last week and was looking at the Saliba property, what is it, Northfield Park? What did they name it? Northfield Park? Something like that. When I was looking at the piece of property that belongs to us, I was having a difficult time trying to figure out where all the boundaries were, just because I couldn't get the software to work properly on the machine I was on. So I'm not sure, but I believe that you are correct that it would open it up into our property.
Yeah, I've been assuming it does abut there because the connection that they're negotiating between the conservation land and the Saliva property is a small piece of the property that the farm is going to be building on. So we must have frontage on that property also.
So in looking at this and looking at what the guidelines are on this, what the ones that concern me the most is deer hunting. I mean, everything else, yes, there's some small rabbit, hare, and squirrel hunting that goes on up through early February. I don't know of anybody in the area that's hunting for bobcat. It could very well happen, and that goes up into March. I'd be okay waiting and learning more information and seeing how the conservation goes down with it. Not that I want to bank our decision off of them, but I'm interested in hearing further some of the pros and cons that they've had. I don't personally think it should happen on Parks land. Just even if it's Parks land not being used for anything concrete at the moment, I just think it's setting a precedent that I don't necessarily think should be set. And I know that there are people that walk through there because we've walked through there numerous times. So, you know, again, it's not something that I would necessarily think about when I say I'm going into this park, even though it's a wooded park. I guess I wouldn't be thinking that I'm going to be coming across a hunter. So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. So
At the absolute least, I want to ban firearms discharge on our properties. That would be the absolute least. And I lean towards no hunting, but definitely no firearms discharges on property.
So is that
on Parks property? So that would include hunting and target shooting and everything.
so maybe so I guess based on that, because that's one thing I didn't think of when I put the agenda together saying hunting, that maybe that when we take this topic up again, we expand it a little to say firearm discharge. That way, if somebody feels that they want to separate the two, they can. It would still, if we said no firearm discharge, it would, obviously there's no hunting with firearms, but it would still allow bow hunting. And you know, that sort of, you know.
Bow hunting and slingshots.
Do you still do slingshots nowadays? I don't even
So
know.
the squirrels.
No, it's not. You sound like my kids. I mean, it wouldn't exclude all hunting, but it would exclude firearm hunting. So yeah, I'd be okay waiting. Some of these things I feel like we're throwing out there, and it seems like we're throwing a lot of stuff out there, and to say, oh, we want to continue having this discussion. But I think as a group, especially now that we're 5 members, I think it's going to be like this for a little while to sort of start ironing out some of the things that have been overlooked in the past, and not wanting to rush things and wanting to make sure everybody's voice is heard. And that goes to members of the public. Maybe there's somebody that will watch this on YouTube and in 2 days' time that is adamant that they need to be hunting squirrels on our parks property because maybe we have like the most like unique squirrel on that piece of property and they want to find it for their prized possession, and let them come and make a case. But if we vote and close it, they can't come and make their case on that. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're going to get it if we voted tonight. I mean, when would we get it signed anyway? I mean, you got more snow coming, and you get traipse through the woods and try and sign the property. And then anyway, so
right.
Yeah. I don't see my thoughts on it changing at all, but
yeah, and we got to get the funding released to purchase the signs too.
Just the signs.
Yeah. Although, Rob, don't we have a machine that we can make signs with? I don't know if we can make that type of sign, but
yeah, I don't believe the DPW is making signs anymore, as the last I heard, unless it was specifically for street signs. I'd have to check on that, Dave. I honestly don't know.
Okay, no.
I'm pretty sure we're not making signs anymore.
Yeah.
We'd have
Okay, thank you.
to figure it out with Rob. I mean, if we make a policy on it, somebody from the town's going to have to figure out how to accommodate said policy. That's what I'm told anyway. They said, okay,
Love it. Okay, I'm going to step away from the computer, but I'll still be listening, but it'll only be for about 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we'll put that another agenda item. My agendas keep getting longer, and these
We keep pushing everything.
getting longer. These +hour meetings are not typical of this board. Here we are, like multiple in a row. All right, so this is the one that is going to be the permanent, I believe, topic on our agenda, and that is parks properties, including Marshall Park in the track. At some point, I'm going to have to change it to, rehab of Marshall Park or master plan of Marshall Park, but that's what's falling under here. Where we are with this is a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of meetings ago, we had asked for the members of the board to put together a list of things that they would like to see at Marshall Park. Did you send that over to Kayla, Chris?
I had sent Kayla one. Yes. Yep.
So Anna, if you have something that you want to send over to Kayla, she will include that in the list. So we have this list, and I will share it with you, Anna. If I'm promising you something, everybody needs to remind me because I will forget. We have this list. The question now becomes what we do with this list and what the next step is. When I was with Rob, I talked to Kayla last week and I was with Rob last week. They have put a request into capital planning for some funding. I don't remember how you phrased it, Rob.
I believe I left it as, I don't have it in front of me, but master plan feasibility study for Marshall Park, something to that effect.
Okay. And you had like 4 or 5 other things ranked above that, correct? When in your presentation?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And then I mean, I guess in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter how Rob ranks things. If the capital planning committee thinks that something is more important than another, they will override that. Nor do I know how many items the capital plan will choose to cover this year. But that request has gone in. The question that I have, that somebody will hopefully have the answer to, likely Rob, is what do we do from here? We have this list. Anna will have it added to this list. Where do we go? What do we do? what does it look like, and what's the best way to garner some public discussion over this so that it's a conductive meeting and we're getting what we need out of it. So I don't know where to go from here.
Well, I guess if I had a vision for it, or kind of a process for it, would be to engage the services of a consultant, whether it's a landscape architect or some other kind of equivalent person, to just look at it on a very conceptual basis. I guess I envision plans drawn up from GIS, from satellite photos, just overlays to, if there's another use or wishes for, from the commission for, uses that you don't currently have at Marshall Park, to kind of come up with something. But that's going to involve input from the commission, and then any public input you may want to kind of look for. That's kind of where I, maybe as the first phase of it, and second phase getting into more detailed study with actual information, whether it's a survey of Marshall Park, to then really lay out what your wants and desires are for it.
So if our next step is to engage a consultant, we don't have the money to engage a consultant, and the capital plan hasn't come to fruition, and I don't even know if we're going to be on it. I guess I don't know. People help me. I don't know what direction we need to move in. We're trying to get this ball rolling, and sometimes it seems like a giant obstacle that we have to jump over.
Can we use some of the budgeted money, or put this as a budget item for next fiscal year?
You mean to get more money from the town?
Or, well, I don't know how the town, Parks Commission, the parks have a budget. And how we use that money, I think, has been, how the money has been allocated and used and reported has been, I guess it's not clear, but can that, well, and I guess since it's not, I don't know. If the budget for the parks, is that for maintenance only? Is that what the line item calls for?
That's what it has been. Is that your understanding of what that line item is for, Rob?
I'm not entirely sure. You mean the item I have in capital planning?
No, just like the budget.
The parks budget?
I think we have two line items. I think we have one that may fall under maintenance, and I think we have one that falls under salary.
Yeah, I don't think what you're looking to do is covered under your budget. Short of spending money to get something going, I guess what I would recommend to the commission is, instead of just you almost have to do some brainstorming and come together on what's the commission's vision for the park. I mean, you have baseball use out there. I mean, you have some different uses. Other sports? Are you looking for soccer or lacrosse? Are you looking for one, in addition to what you have? Are you looking for more fields, or are you looking to kind of reimagine how they're currently being used with other uses? Maybe that's where the commission as a whole needs to focus some energy on prior to doing anything, because right now all you have is, from me, is a line item, and hopefully getting some money to start doing this. It might suit people better if you have a clearer vision with some thoughts up front on why and how you're going to do that. That, I guess, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our goal with the list that we're bringing together now from the individual commissioners was to fine tune that list a little bit with things that we saw needed to be kept as uses at that property, and suggest some others that we have in mind for new ones. But also, once we put that together, do outreach and say, okay, the commission has come up with these items. Do you support these? And are there any others? Asking that question to the public. I think that's the next step in my eyes, to have a good vision to move forward in the future if we get the funding for the actual starting to plan out the property. I think somewhere early on, we're going to need the survey, because other than, I actually have a copy right here of the survey that was done for the parking plan, and this is only a draft. So we can't consider it to be an official survey of the property, and it does not go beyond the field areas. So the entire wooded area and Marshall Pond are not included in this plan. It was done by Whitman and Bigham. So it's a document that we can look at, because it gives you a good picture of the open areas of the park, at least at this point. But part of our vision is to develop uses for the wooded area from the fields down to Marshall Pond, and including hopefully a little pocket picnic area right adjacent to Marshall Pond on Highland Street. But not knowing where the boundaries are, especially behind all those houses on Highland Street and Chestnut Street, is going to be problematic on trying to plan trails through that wooded area to connect the main park to the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what kind of a cost would be attached to that, but that's kind of where that $50,000 number came from, hoping that, if that funding comes to fruition, that would be enough to accomplish the survey and or some consulting. Because personally, I'd like to see no more than that, or not much more than that, actually come out of local taxpayers funding. Once we have a vision for the park, then Open Space has committed to helping us with applying for grants. And there are all kinds of grants out there available if you know where to go for them. At least so far there are.
Do you remember, Dave, is there a grant that we could utilize for the actual consulting piece of it? The planning, the layout, the design?
Well, my original plan, and I have not communicated with our legislative delegation since the elections. And they haven't reached out to anybody in the town that I am aware of anyway, at least not publicly. But my goal had been to go after either an earmark or, earmark would be the best way actually, or money through one of the grants that the state sets up for that purpose. I had a commitment for that process to be started after the election, but that's not an option right at the moment.
Okay.
As for grants for the actual planning of the project, I believe there are opportunities, but the bigger nut is the actual project itself.
Right. So people, that was as clear as mud to me as what we're supposed to do next.
I have a question. For a earmark to be granted, and Dave might know more than I do on this, doesn't need to have a specific use or project or some sort. So for example, for the fire department, sometimes is to buy some kind of equipment. How would the earmark be used for this type of study? I'm not sure. I've seen some seen earmarks used for that type. Have you?
I can't quote anything specific, but I have also heard or also been told that earmark money does not absolutely have to be spent for the project that it was earmarked for. Once the, and I was surprised to hear this, but I got it from a good source. Earmark money can be spent for just about anything once it's in the town's coffers. I'm not saying you take an earmark that was planned for firefighting equipment and you spend it on planning or surveying a park. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that earmarks can be used once they're deposited to the account of the municipality. It can be actually used for just about anything. Money in bonds, I think is very limited to what it was intended for, if you can get the governor to sign off on that money. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I was just thinking more, how can we plead this to our elected officials, to, because what I see in earmarks are usually for something specific, a purchase of something.
Yeah, well, development of recreational uses on a municipal property is the way you would word it as an earmark.
So I guess my thought is I think we need to keep moving forward, even if it's tiny baby steps, because this process took long enough to get going. I don't want to lose complete momentum on it. So my thought on it is to pick the ear of the Open Space Committee again. They've got some unbelievably smart people when it comes to grants. See if there's anything that they think could help us if the capital plan request doesn't go through. And then to look at, and I don't think it's fair to do it without Anna's input, to look at the list of ideas that have come up with, because there might be some that are easily weeded out that we, maybe one of us had a grand idea and nobody else thought of it and they want to put it in, or maybe it's the opposite. Somebody had a grand idea and they're like, nobody else will support it. And start having some of those discussions, because I do think if we can keep a discussion going and it trickles its way out to the public, I think it keeps interest in that property going. I think it makes it known that we're working on something. Hopefully it garners some public input, and figure out how to get some of the public input. The public input that we've had so far, we had a meeting a few years ago, and it's not that it wasn't productive, it's just we get this information and where do we go with it? So we have, I do somewhere in my notes have the list of stuff that was discussed at that meeting. Open Space ran a survey and we have those survey results. But that, again, wasn't a survey that the Parks Commission came up with. I don't exactly know how some of these items got in there. So we could look at that and see if there's anything in there that we're missing. And we could certainly have a public forum or two before we get it rolling to see if anybody has any grand ideas. I just don't want to lose the momentum that we have so far.
One thing that I don't know if the meeting you're talking about is a meeting that I attended a few years back at the DPW building.
Yes.
It is. But one thing we had talked on, and I think in some of the meetings that I've seen conversations here, is that, we can have a great big plan for Marshall Park, which we are calling the master plan, but there are other things that we can do to improve the current use. I see a lot of people walking around Marshall Park, and then there is the track that, I think it needs some maintenance. The picnic table next to Highland, I don't see that as a capital planning, is a bench that we have talked about it, clearing a little area, put some wood chips down, and you accomplished that. And my question is, how can we get some of those things moving? And I know it's and that's where I was asking earlier a little bit about that that money allocated to parks. And I know Dave has said prior that, we need to understand how this money has been spent. And we know the money's been spent. It's just, what kind of, how can we, as policymakers, have a role on how that money's being spent? It's my question, because I think there is money, and we just need to figure out how we can get do these baby steps, and just maintaining what we got.
Yeah.
So sometimes I question those just throwing money into like if our plan is to actually formulate some sort of master plan, capital plan, does it behoove us to spend what little money we have to make a temporary fix until we come up with a bigger project?
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but for example, track maintenance on Marshall Park, that's, whatever we do now, it's going to take several years to get implemented. Right now, we have citizens that could be walking around that track. We have the senior center. And I see, I mean, not now, but, they used to always have morning walks, and they walk down here and they go to Marshall Park. That was always their loop. And why, I mean, we're talking about maintenance here. We're not talking about building, and since we have money allocated for maintenance, how do we attach some of the money, some of the actions with policies that we create?
Well, I'm told that we create the policy and they'll figure out how to make it work.
Right.
Said that a couple of times tonight, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing to that, Chris, is that this money is, it's not like we're building a savings account. If we don't use it, it's pretty much we lose it.
Yeah.
So if we are talking about something that was a rollover, we could maybe make the case for that. But I don't think.
As I understand, if we can formulate the plan, I certainly don't want to lose money that's in our budget and have it roll back to the general coffers and so forth. But just making sure we're going through and thinking about it the right way, and if we can use it in a way that's going to impact, a potential master plan and kind of feed those sorts of under the guise of maintenance. Look at it that way. And I think obviously, I think the track is part of that. Right. I do. So I hear what you're saying with the track standpoint. I just, if we're, I think that can be something that's utilized. So I understand that as well.
Chris, the thought process, at least my thought process in bringing the track back up to what it was 25 years ago, at least initially, number one, fairly inexpensive to accomplish that. I tried a couple of things already before the snow came to see what the surface looked like if it was just scraped on the surface and then tilled a couple inches deep and then raked back out and rolled. And it pretty much comes right back to its original condition, with the exception of the fact that there is a little, there's quite a bit more organic matter that's infiltrated the cinder. But with continued grading and rolling, I think within a year or two, it could be back to its original surface for the most part. And the basketball court, if we could put a little bit of time and effort and money into that to bring it so that it's usable. I think my thought process is that if we fix a couple of these things that will bring the general public back to the park, it will help sell the park's master plan when we get that pulled together. If we increase usage of the park over the next year or two by citizens, and they're there on a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever, then we'll have a core group of citizens that are actively using the park, and hopefully we'll be on board with a renovation that brings the entire park up to standards that it has not seen in 25 years.
If we're, continue to look at the lists and get Anna's input as well with the list that Kayla had shared after we gave some notes and so forth. I mean, what should we be soliciting more public consensus? I mean, it sounds like this happened a few years ago in some round or fashion, but obviously the dynamic of the town has changed a little bit, I think. And
Yeah, and the open space survey, it sort of went out and I'll share the results with you on that. I'll actually forward it to everybody. I don't know how some of the headings got there. Like one of the questions is, what kind of facilities do you think the town needs? Playground, skate park, ice skating, like it was things like that. I'm not sure who made the decision on how those got in there. So I think that, I don't know how much weight we want to put on those answers. And we did have a discussion a few years ago. I say it was a few years ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago. I don't really remember. And we had it at the DPW building. It was during a regular meeting type thing. But it was one of those things where we put it out there too as a public meeting, and I threw out some invites to people that had expressed interest in the past. We get a turnout of people that came, but it was before even I knew what we were doing or how to do it. So all that information got compiled, but then it didn't go anywhere. And now I think it's time to use that information. And I do think it was a small enough group that, not that their opinions weren't valid or anything like that. I think that there's probably more opinions out there. So if we can figure out a way to solicit more feedback. I
think it's something as simple as like a Google document or something like that. It just says, hey, this is what we're doing. We're thinking of, we're brainstorming over a capital plan or a master plan for Marshall Park. And, really simple, 2 quick questions. Do you use Marshall Park? Do you use Marshall Park at all now? And then, what would bring you to the park? What would you like to see in the park? And it's just a simple 2-question kind of Google form. It just, everything's going to drop right in there.
I'm fine with it being open-ended. I sometimes feel like when you give too many suggestions, that's what they lean to when they don't expand upon it, and somebody else might have a great idea. One of the local parks, I don't remember what town it is, they were putting in a gaga ball court. That's something that hadn't even touched my radar until I saw it there. I'm like, wow, somebody had an idea and they brought it forth and they ran with it. And that's easy. If anybody doesn't know what gaga ball is, it's basically a wooden ring that you play inside of. So I like the open-endedness of the question. So I say that we ask Anna to send some of your ideas over to Kayla so that your opinions are voiced in that document and it's not just ours.
Can I see the list so I'm not? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And just so you know, none of us had a list to work off of. So this is, you've got an added bonus here. So I think let's do that. And then let's, continue the conversation about what I'll call the low-lying fruit, which is some of the things that Anna and David mentioned with the walking track, the picnic area, and I do think it's beneficial to bring people into that park to try to garner the support when we're going to need it, try to start making those community connections, and then figure out how to, sort of not solve Chris's concern, but I think he's right. I mean, we don't want to spend a boatload of money on something that's not going to be there permanently. I think that there's a way around that. And even with the walking track, if we revitalize that walking track, I foresee it staying there through the master plan, even if it has to shift a little bit in some direction, just to accommodate something else that we want to put in. I do think we will have a walking track there. I think that as COVID has shown us, that the opportunity to have things that are opened and accessible when other things are not is important. And a walking track is certainly one of those that can be utilized regardless of pandemic or not. And we'll figure out community outreach, whether it be a survey or, that may be something that Kayla can try to organize. And and get going, even if it's posted on the few places that she, the Facebook page, the rec page, and then use that feedback and see what happens with the capital plan and sort of make a better plan as more information becomes available to us.
Rob, so as regards to some of these maintenance items, things that already exist and bringing, making them usable. I know you've only been on the job for a little bit, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if it's things like the walking track as an example, if that's something that, each year a little bit can be done. Yeah, I don't see why we can't start hitting some of those things. Unfortunately, the reality of it right now is I'm short-staffed. We're having a hard time hiring people, which makes, unfortunately, some of the smaller things get overlooked because we're busy doing other things. So hopefully that can get better with more people getting hired or filling the positions we have rather. And then maybe some of those easier things to tackle can get done.
When you're looking at, you being new in the job and all the responsibilities that you have and the staff that you have, do you see as this being done by your staff or maybe by a third party? Because I know we have some open spaces in town that are maintained by a third party.
Yeah, in fact, all the maintenance currently being done, just the regular maintenance, mowing, picking up leaves, all that stuff is being done by outside contractors.
Right.
So to have them do some of the other things, it's not really in their contract. I mean, we can ask and maybe they'll oblige us on some smaller things, but I think moving forward in the future, I'd like to be able to do those things or some of those things in-house. So it's just a matter of finding the workforce and the time.
Okay. So you're saying for this current year, because we're so far in and, maintenance right now, you pretty much almost even done raking leaves at this point.
Yeah.
But you're saying that for early spring, the goal would be for your team to be able to handle some of these things.
Well, I think for the foreseeable future, it's still going to be contractors doing the regular maintenance work until that can possibly change. So some of the other things you're talking about, if a bench needs to be repaired or you want to spruce up an area, at a picnic table and get some wood chips, some of those things I can envision us doing.
Okay. So is it the case then that as you look, as you learn about your job, that you see everything that's under that you're responsible for, that you believe that you will have the staff to do regular maintenance on all the park's properties, or you don't know that yet?
Right now, no. I mean,
right now, no, but in the future.
In the future, I mean, my goal long term would be to have. I don't have a parks department. I don't have staff. I would love to have a crew in house that was responsible for all the regular maintenance of parks and grounds. That's real long term, and that's maybe only my vision. I don't know. But ideally, I mean, I think it should be, and I think we should have the manpower to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is going to be a work in progress, and as I'm looking at the clock, 3-hour meetings are not normal for us.
And it's not my fault, Karen.
You said that a couple of times tonight too, Karen.
Wait till next month, Karen.
So let's.
You want to go back and vote on the hunting thing and take it off the.
Let's keep making this a work in progress, and Anna, you send over your ideas. Let's come ready to, talk about a couple of them at the next meeting. When I say talk about them, I don't mean like, let's look at the plot plan of Marshall Park and be like, okay, we can fit this over here. like, let's just talk about some of the pros and cons of each thing that comes up and what we could use that for. So that at the end of the day, when we're ready to make a priority list, we have the information that we need of why somebody might have thought, say, a gazebo was important down there. So that's what I'm thinking. And we can sort of muddle through this together, because clearly this is not my area of expertise. at all.
Also keep in mind for Marshall that as a commission, we have committed to, if a skate park was going to be built on Parks property, that it's going to be at Marshall Park as far as we're concerned.
Absolutely. So let me jump, before we jump into that discussion, because that's gonna have to be on, we have to get our, we need to get our January meeting on the agenda. The next thing I had on there, I really don't have an update. I have open space on there. Currently, I am the open space representative. They're working through, they're meeting about monthly. I think that's may start cutting down a little bit. I took it on after, I was the Parks Commission rep for a while, I don't know, a year or so. And then Susanna took it over, and then she had to give it up, and I didn't want the spot to sit empty, so I took it on. And I didn't know if either Chris or Anna were interested in taking that over. Don't feel like you have to. I'll keep muddling through it. It's not a huge commitment. It's just, I have little kids, and like, for example, they're meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I don't know if you've ever seen a 2-year-old at the dinner hour, but it's not pretty. So I didn't know if before I, continue to muddle through it, if either one of you had any interest. You don't need to answer tonight, but I did want to throw it out there. That it would be great to be able to give up that role that I have there.
And just another comment, I think open space is going to be a very strong ally as we move forward with this Marshall Park plan, because it was identified in the space use plan that Marshall Park was a priority.
It is probably, I will honestly say, it is, it's a great group of people. The amount of information that these people on this committee know blows me out of the water, because I don't know how they know all of this stuff. It's extremely educational. I enjoy it very much. Again, it's just, for me, it's a time commitment thing. So are either of you interested, or is it something that either of you want to think about?
Can I ask a question? Now that meetings are remote, you're just mostly watching the meetings, right?
You're a voting member.
Oh, you're a voting member?
Yep, you're a voting member. So Parks
Oh,
gets a seat at the table as a voting member and part of the Open Space Committee.
okay.
It doesn't have to be, we're 5 members. It doesn't have to be one of us. If there's somebody that we think would be interested in representing Parks, that's not on the Parks Commission, we can appoint,
Interesting.
bring in somebody else.
Okay. So it's not a liaison, it's a representative of the Parks Commission that's part of open space. Gotcha. Okay. If I could think about it, I am actually very interested. I love the idea of Marshall Park. I really want to get the ball rolling in some way or the other. I need to see how these meetings and work will pile up. This is my first meeting, so if I could just have it into next month to think about it. If Chris would like to go for it, Chris. I don't know how signing up for the Parks Commission, another one, will play into my schedule and my life. But
Yeah,
Chris,
I was gonna say same kind of. I just not ready to make a decision tonight, but I would take a look and kind of read through some of their minutes and get a little more understanding maybe of what's involved, and then I'm certainly not opposed.
Their meetings will be, they're posted on YouTube. So our meeting, excuse me, tomorrow night will be on YouTube. Right now the big topic is general municipal properties and what to do with them. And, I was involved when, to some extent, when the Sliba property came came up. I worked on the open space plan that went through the state. It's very much there's so much information that you would never have known. These pieces of property in town that I didn't even know existed. It's amazing. Half of them I'm like, that's ours. You know,
The list you shared was, I was like, oh, wow.
yeah. So, and again, it's Brandon Kibbe is the chair of that. Paula Bertram is on that. I believe she is the planning board rep. Bob Pease from conservation. Sarah Kammer is she's just a
Member at large.
member at large. I think we have another member at large too. Mike Tooley, maybe.
Yep.
No, Lynn. Well, then there's Lynn Mann. I don't know.
Or
who-
Lynn, yeah.
So it's a great group of people, and it's extremely educational. So if you guys would think about it, if you're interested, let us know at the meeting. If you're not, maybe I will, depending on what their schedules continue to look like, maybe I'll put some feelers out to see if someone else wants to represent us for a bit. Dave's an automatic no. He's got way too much stuff on it. So I talked to the state park people. Did I forward to everybody the email that was sent after our joint meeting? Does anybody know if they got something from me?
Let me go back.
I'll re-forward it. So it came to my personal email, so I've got to forward it and then forward it. So I just wanted to make sure you had that. When I followed up with that email and talked to Anthony Cayozzo, and we were looking at January, I told him that I thought the January meeting would work best. However, based on the fact that we are at almost the 3-hour mark of this meeting, I'm wondering if we should try to divide next month somewhat into two, so that when we talk about the skate park, we're only dealing with the skate park. I'm not necessarily sold on that, because I think an extra meeting in a month is a lot for me, but that was one thought I dropped in my head. So I need some meeting dates. If we stick with Mondays, I think the skate park was leaning towards the 25th, because that fits their availability better. But if it needs to be a different Monday or a different day, that's fine. I'm not sure what everybody's schedule is.
Mondays seem to be fine for me. I would think it makes sense maybe to have that as a separate discussion, and if it isn't a lengthy one and it's short, then it's short. But I don't envision it's going to be very short.
Nothing to do with the skate park is
Yeah.
short.
But
We'll be setting an agenda for the skate park. If anybody has any input, feel free to send it my way on what an agenda item should look like for them, to try to keep it a little more streamlined and not some big open 5-hour discussion on why it should go one place and not another, or it needs to be 15,000 square feet and not 5 square feet. You know, I just.
Well,
kind of streamline it.
you know, so one thing, and I'm just saying this, if we are going to have a meeting with the group, I would like to know what is the purpose of the meeting, even before setting up the agenda, because this board has already voted on 2 main topics. So I don't know, you know, and I am assuming there was deliberation, and this commission looked for information and how they voted. So I don't know. I would hope, if we're having a meeting, I would hope we are having a meeting and where they are presenting us something to either accommodate the request that this commission had, or to give us more information, because otherwise I feel like we have made the decision. I wasn't part of it, but I'm taking we as the commission. So what would be the purpose of the meeting is, you know, because if they want to send us relevant information I don't know, to send us relevant information to then request another vote, because that's ultimately what we'll need, right? Are we re-voting something we already voted? So
I think that's their hope. I don't know.
well, but it just like,
It's
that's the
similar to
hope.
what they talked about at the select board meeting, right? Where that entire select board didn't make the vote that was done last time.
Right, but
Where
I support, like, I'm not asking for another vote. I think where this commission has had two votes, I think, on the position, and I'm not requesting an agenda item to take upon this. So what is this meeting for? Is
So-
it
my feeling is that this meeting should be discussed to meet and discuss the pros and cons of putting a skate park in Marshall Park. I agree with you. I really have no interest in revisiting TC Passios. It's not an area that I think the skate park could go in. I do know that they would like us to change our mind on that. And that they would like a change of mind on the square footage. That is my concern about not setting a concise agenda and trying to stick to it, is that they're going to try to sell us something and change our votes from what we've already decided on. That is the Parks Commission's right to do so. If
Right.
somebody wants to bring that forward and change a vote, that can certainly happen. I'm looking at it is that the only property that we currently own is Marshall Park, or the only property they're currently looking at that could be a home for the skate park would be Marshall Park. And I would like to hear the pros and the cons and, allow us to, as a Parks Commission, throw some of that off of each other for a bit.
sorry, cat.
That would be my hope.
But was the vote that we had before saying that we don't support it on TCP, or was it the vote that we support on Marshall Park?
The vote was that we did not support it at the TC Passios location. So there's been two votes. One was taken this past, I believe it was February, and it was the vote that said we did not support it at TC Passios, and the other one was taken back
Is that 2 years ago in that meeting?
years ago, like December or January 2019, somewhere in there, saying that we would support up to 5,000 square feet. So, I don't want to dive too deep into it because we don't have it as a full topic agenda item, but I would like to try to figure out what our agenda item should say, and solidify the date that we want to meet with them. And if we want to do a second meeting, would be to come up with the date of that second meeting.
Okay, I would support an agenda item for discussing the pros and the cons for Marshall Park. I will, and because I would see that as us taking on something new. I don't think we should rehash something that was already discussed unless someone on the board would like to. So, and if they would like to participate on that meeting, they are welcome to. If they're not, I don't know what their position is. I don't think unless there is reasons for, I don't think we should revisit the size of the park, because this commission has already looked into the information they had sent and made a vote.
Is everybody, go ahead, Chris.
I have concern about the size discussion from a safety standpoint, and just kind of starting to look at things and so forth. That's still, so I mean, I think it's still in my mind, my personal mind, it's still I wasn't part of that vote. No. And I know how I would have voted. So I do have some concerns. I don't think it needs to be necessarily as big as maybe some are thinking, but we'll talk about it. I think it's still
So I think that
it's a topic of discussion in my mind still.
I think when we talk about pros and cons of Marshall Park, we could probably, I think that the size requirement or the size discussion could probably fit into that, the pros and cons, because in the grand scheme, they could multi-phase this if they wanted to. They could do 5,000 now, and if a year or two from now, they gave, if it was on our property, we gave permission, they could do a phase 2 if they wanted to. So I do think that there's a piece in here that could include the size of it. What I don't want to have happen is an agenda item that is so open-ended that we just chase our tails and we don't get anything accomplished. Where
Right.
Market Park is the only piece of property we currently are able to govern, I think we should be limiting the discussion to Marshall Park.
Yeah, I think it's critical that we're on the same page, but we need to come out of that meeting all on the same page, I think. And I don't think this can be an ongoing, from their standpoint and ours. I think we need to understand what their thoughts are. And I think that they need to have some, if they're going to continue to push forward and raise money and continue to push a message, that they need to have a clear message from whatever group in town is going to deliver that message, so that they can do that effectively. Because at some point they'll get a stage where it's going to be critical for them to have those pieces in place in order to continue to raise money.
Right.
So,
So does January 25th work for everybody for a skate park discussion? With the skate park people?
January 25th. That's the last Monday of the month.
open for me.
Open for me as well.
Yeah, the only thing that might interfere a little bit would be TCP, but we haven't scheduled that late into the month yet.
Okay.
So
Would you
What
guys,
time do they usually meet to?
5:30.
could we actually, would it be unreasonable to do a 7 o'clock meeting on that skate park one?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
It just works better in my schedule.
And if TCP was meeting, Dave, that gives you a cushion a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Why don't I do this? Why don't give me the week to sort of work out an agenda item on this, because we can get this, if that's the only topic on our agenda for that day, we can get it posted pretty quick. And as I always do, I can send out this is what our agenda item is. And if somebody has something specific that they want it on the agenda for that discussion, we can certainly add it. That's not an open meeting law violation because we're not discussing it. We're just adding it to the agenda. And then what would work for folks for just a regular parks meeting? And I do think, I don't know how we're going to do it. We need to be mindful of the time. I don't think we should be ever going over 3 hours without a meeting of the minds that that's okay to do. I know other boards have a policy that basically says if it gets to this time frame, there has to be a vote to continue. I just think 3 hours is a little long.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have any nights available that we could do a regular January meeting?
I'm fairly flexible in January, I think. Do we want to stick with Mondays, or are you looking at other days?
I'm good with anything for the most part. But I'm flexible to what everybody else wants.
I like the 7 o'clock time frame better. It just gives me time to wrap up work and get home. Otherwise, you guys are going to see a lot of white walls.
Yeah.
But I can make 6:30 like I did today, 6:27. But I'm fairly flexible. I prefer early in the week than later in the week.
So the only reason we've been doing 6:30 was because trying to get Kayla here, taking into consideration that she has kids. However, if we put the topics on the agenda that we need her for early, then she can do what she did tonight and bow out when she needs to. And I know that Susanna, deals with very similar situations. So again, that's
Right.
where trying to maybe have.
Yeah,
more-
6:30. I'll make it work. Might have to take it from my office.
We would do Sundays. Does anyone ever do a Sunday evening kind of deal? Like, I don't know.
We
No, are you
actually did one.
serious?
Like,
We actually did one. We had an emergency meeting just before the beach opened.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just, if days don't matter, then throw that out there as well. I don't know.
Let's pencil in or let's put in January 11th. We don't want to be real close to the first of the year, so that would be the 4th. The 18th is a holiday, so the only thing left is the 11th.
And I actually don't think we're gonna have anything new on the agenda, so I think it's gonna be mostly policy that we're pushing off. If anybody has anything, certainly shoot it my way when you get the email from me that says, hey, does anybody have an agenda item? I do feel bad that this is Rob's first meeting with us and we've gone on for so long.
He's in a comfy chair though.
Rob, this is not usual.
Looks squishy.
I complain about doing minutes because a 3-hour meeting, the minutes are long. It's
I've
crazy.
had enough meetings in my career to know to find the comfy chair for a meeting like this. No offense.
Well, this isn't difficult, so hopefully it won't continue. So,
Yeah.
all right, so let's do January 11th at 6:30 and the 25th at 7. We don't necessarily need you here, Rob, for the 25th. If you want to join, you're welcome. Same thing with the 11th.
Yeah, and as far as it goes, I'm flexible. If you come up with an agenda item, you think you need me, or you have something you want to discuss with me, just let me know. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Same thing back. If there's something that you can't, there's something that you want us to know and you're not going to be at the meeting, just send something over and I'll read it during the update portion. So, all
Will
right.
do.
So I
Will
have
do.
the 11th and the 25th down. I think we're good. We'll go from there at that point for February. I get a motion to adjourn at 9:41 p.m.
So moved.
Yep, I'll second then.
I vote yes.
Yes. Dave?
Yes.
Aye.
And that's a yes for myself. We are all done. Everybody go, I don't know, do something other than sit in a chair at a meeting.
Good night,
Hey,
all.
folks.
Good night. Nice to meet you, Rob.
Have a good night.
Good night. Thanks,
Night.
Karen.
Good night.